Chairman called me. He might be here tomorrow. He might be here. You're going to rub that with the rest of the day? Oh, no? Well, I just got to put aside the 2 people. I think if I go on, I'll be around. Thank you. Appreciate it. Oh, that's right. If we are, I'm going to try to slip out and leave the house on Tuesday. Get out of my house and try It's on the river. It's on the Oklahoma River. It's up very end. I'm not trying to fish Wednesday. I'll fish Wednesday. If I get lucky, put it in my mind. We'll see you around. Thank you, buddy.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, thank you. We are opening our afternoon session. And I would like to not only reconvene, but to go back to for all of us to go back to this morning, and we have item A3 that we deferred to this afternoon. And we are so fortunate to have Thomas Eason here, who loves this subject. Mr. Imperiled Species, Thomas.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, good afternoon. It's good to be up here. I am going to try to speed up my presentation a little bit, but I still want to hit the main points, so I'll try to find a good balance there. I'm going to update you on our efforts and progress to date on our imperiled species management planning. And I wanted to start with a brief background, because I think 2 of you have been involved for a lot of the history, and the rest of you maybe not as long. So I won't dwell on it, but the full history goes back to 1994 and our old listing process, and we had 15 years of major deliberations and working with partners and stakeholders, fits and starts, and culminated in 2010 with a new state listing process, rules, and a whole new state listing program. And so the imperiled species management planning is the current step of a long multi-step process, and it's a very large, complex issue with a total of about 133 imperiled species in Florida. Today I'll be homing in on the 60 state threatened species. I won't be going into efforts for the federally listed species, although there's a lot of overlap in what I'll talk about. And then just a quick reminder, a previous step was we've done biological status reviews on all, at the time, 64 state threatened species. So there's been a lot of work that's got us to where we are now, and then we're carrying that work forward. Very quickly, we have worked hard to take a holistic, integrative approach. When we first started, we were thinking 64 state threatened species, 64 plans. Then we started looking at our bear plan, our manatee plan, our gopher tortoise plan, and they're all 130 pages plus. And we decided we need to wrap our minds around how all this is going to come together. So we took what we're calling a phased approach. Phase 1, our species action plans. I'll give a quick update on those, and then mostly today focus on phase 2, which is what we're calling integrated conservation strategies, or you can just think of them as themes. And then coming soon, early next year and into 2015, will be rules, permitting, protections, and pulling all of the imperiled species management planning efforts together. So the good news is we have 49 species action plans, the final draft's done, reviewed by partners and stakeholders, and they're going up on the website as we speak. So that was a huge lift. Those are out there. We will continue to revise those as we move forward with the rest of the planning effort. But staff have done awesome work, and that's plans for 60 species and 49 separate plans. So today I'm going to talk a little bit more about our integrated conservation strategies, and then we hope to come back in the spring of 2014 with our final themes, or ICSs, and then beginning in the fall of 2014, start talking about rules, policies, and how all this is going to come together. So again, I've already talked about the species action plan, so I won't go into any more detail other than saying this is a historic moment where we have management plans for all state threatened species in Florida, which we have not had previously. So talking a little bit about our themes or integrated conservation strategies, we've been doing a lot of looking at those 49 plans, and there's a lot of threats and needs and actions in there. So we wanted to look across all of those plans, or large numbers of those plans, and find common actions or threats or challenges that would apply to all of them. We also then wanted to look at, are there emergent properties that come out of looking at strategic actions across all of these species. And I will say that your meeting in October had really good timing for this effort, because we're right in the throes of wrestling with, I think what Eric called the whys and getting into the hows. So the discussions you all have been having have been helping us frame up how we think about this, and we're already starting to roll what we're hearing and learning from you into that process. So I'll touch a little bit on all that as I move forward. So we currently have 5 themes or integrated conservation strategies, one focused on habitat conservation, one on research and monitoring, incentives and influencing, education outreach, and then law and policy. And then I'll quickly go through these, and again with an eye towards pointing out where what we've been hearing from your discussions and how that's been helping us shape these. I also wanted to mention that we had a 6th theme that came out of our work with partners and looking at all the plans, and we decided to integrate that theme across the others, and that's planning for and then adapting to a changing climate. So you won't see a standalone unit on climate adaptation, but we are weaving that thought process and potential actions throughout the other actions in the planning process. So habitat conservation and management, again, one of the key, what did Eric call them? Policy focal areas that have been coming out of what we've been hearing you all talking about. So hear you loud and clear on habitat conservation. 2 main elements to this theme right now. One is identifying the important areas that we've heard you all talk about a lot. And then the second one is managing those areas in ways that work for everyone. And so an example of a theme or a strategy that cuts across all of this is that the small map you see up there is a statewide look from multiple databases focused on imperiled species, water quantity and quality, and all sorts of statewide databases focused on natural resources. And that's an overlay with priorities 1 through 5 of those critical areas in the state. So we already have the strong science foundation to do a lot of the work that you all have been talking about. And then I won't go into detail, it could be a whole presentation in and of itself, but we also have then started working on what we call the Cooperative Conservation Blueprint, which is taking the science foundation of these critical areas, working with all of the local landowners, people, and then developing a consensus idea of what are the important areas, how are we going to conserve them, how are we going to do that in ways that works for everyone, including the private landowners whose lands show up on these maps. So that's a lot of work in progress, but again, a lot of alignment with what I've been hearing you all talking about, and we've been tweaking how we've been thinking about it based on your discussions. Research and monitoring, a lot of this is filling critical data gaps. For a lot of these species, we don't know where they are, how many of them there are. And so this theme is focused on filling those important data gaps. And again, one of the elements that came out of your all's discussions were management tools. So you can see one of the bullets here is developing techniques and tools. So again, a lot of alignment or convergence with what we've been hearing you all talk about. And then this one is where I think we get into the core of where we can continue to do better in Florida and where your all's guidance is really helping us. So we have an entire theme focused on incentives and influencing. So this is how do we work with the 75% or so of the state is in private ownership. How do we work with those people in ways that allows them to keep making a living off the landscape and continue to provide good habitat for fish and wildlife. And a quote that I'm not sure which one of you threw out there, but it came up at your October meeting was Aldo Leopold back in the 1940s. He was way ahead of his time. He said conservation will ultimately boil down to rewarding the private landowner who serves the public interest. And that's what this theme is all about. And I'm happy to report it's not part of this actual process, but we've been working on this with our Gopher Tortoise program. We have a pilot project in place right now in Southwest Florida where we have, I think, 5 or 6 landowners with tens of thousands of acres who have signed up for a 1-year pilot where we're paying them an amount per acre for them to continue to provide good Gopher Tortoise habitat. So again, small forays, but I think within the imperiled species management planning process, we have an opportunity to take this to another level and keep pushing on it. Education and outreach. I've heard you all talk a lot about relevancy or the future of fish and wildlife in Florida. So two main elements here is one, identifying themes like fire that cut across a lot of what we do, and then have agency-wide messaging. So no matter what we're talking about, we weave the importance of fire for upland landscapes into there. Other messaging like conserving upland habitats is important for imperiled species. It's also important for quail and a lot of other species that may be hunted or used in different ways, and that's a good thing. We can leverage that so that the work we're doing on imperiled species helps with quail management and vice versa, and that there's a lot going on in the state in that regard. And then another component of this is citizen science, which is getting citizens out there, helping us collect good data so that we can learn and then adapt to what's going on with these species. And then the last one, save the most challenging for last, law and policy. We literally have a whole new way of the way our rule is written and what it could mean. So we're taking for the first time a holistic look at what do we want our rules and regs to be, and what do we want, how do we want that policy that underpins all of this to roll out. And I think this is a critical component to where we're working hard to find that balance between protecting the species in the ways that they need to, but also doing that in a way that minimizes regulation and regulatory burden on people. And this is where I think we're going to need your guidance and help as we get towards the end of this process, because finding that balance will be a challenge, and I think we're going to have to push on that a lot to get to where we ultimately need to be. And then I wanted to wind down with, we're not waiting to get all the planning done before we do. So this is just a couple of projects to highlight a lot of excellent work that's going on out there. Florida bonneted bats, we've got a lot of work trying to figure out where they roost, where their distribution and numbers are, hopefully to work with the feds, because several of these species are potentially in the process of becoming federally listed. The blue-nosed shiner doing a lot of work on the distribution and relative numbers, where they are. The fox squirrel taxonomic work to figure out, do we have different subspecies of fox squirrels, or are they not that distinct? And then for the bog frog, actually doing aquatic restoration and then showing how bog frogs have moved back into the areas as we hope they would based on that work. And so, again, this is my third update that we've given on imperiled species management planning. I've tended to go fast with you all, but this is huge, complex, heavy lifting going on. We're engaging hundreds of staff, hundreds of stakeholders, and there's no one right answer. So we want to keep you apprised of what's going on. We'll be coming back, and particularly as we get into the law and policy part of this, we really want to engage you and get your feedback on how to find a sweet spot there. So I will leave it with that. I appreciate your attention, and I'll be happy to answer any questions or take any guidance that you have. Thank you.
Thomas, thank you. We have 4 speakers. Mr. Vice Chairman.
Yeah, we have Byron Meharry, and then Lyle McCandless, and then Lori McDonald.
Didn't introduce myself before. Byron Meharry with the Everglades Coordinating Council, which is a consortium of 18 conservation organizations. Just very briefly, here to support staff. I sat on the Imperiled Species Listing Committee, numerous video conferences. Although I'm a hook and bullet guy, I don't harvest anything I don't eat. And I'm all for preserving the species, considering that 99.5% of all the things that have ever lived on this earth are now extinct. I would hope that we could stave off that from happening for a number of our species. So we're just here to support them. Thank you.
Great. Lyle?
I'll waive my 3 minutes. I may get a little long-winded at the end of the day.
Thank you.
We'll bank
Lyle,
that. We'll bank those.
Very thoughtful.
Thank those minutes. Lori McDonald?
Following on Lyle's.
Thank you. Oh, this is,
They're banking minutes. That's it.
all right. Our next issue. All right, Diane. We have proposed rule changes for hunting, 2014-15. Diane Eggman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Hello, Commissioners. This is the annual process, and we're presenting draft rules today for the major proposed hunting rules and our rules relating to our FWC managed areas. The presentation is going to cover just the highlights. You have full summaries of all the proposed rule changes in the background documents. Before I go over the rule proposals, though, I would like to mention the Commission's leadership over the years to expand hunting freedoms. The Commission has, through these rule changes, through this rule change process, has removed restrictions, increased opportunities, improved hunter satisfaction, and found new ways to encourage people to hunt. This direction and philosophy is what staff uses during our rule development process. So since 2005, I'd just like to touch on a few summary points. Since 2005, the rule changes that you have adopted have resulted in 36 new areas in our FWC management area system. 165,000 new acres of public hunting in the system. allowing guests on quota permits for our WMA areas. You've removed quotas from 56 quota hunts, instituted 43 family hunts on 25 areas. You've added and expanded many types of hunts for migratory birds, hogs, nighttime raccoon hunts. You've added days and hunts to existing opportunities on many areas. You established a youth turkey hunting weekend statewide, and put youth turkey hunts on 81 of our managed areas. Expanded the statewide squirrel season, allowed the use of air guns for squirrels and rabbits, and established a private lands deer management program to add flexibility for private landowners. So with that basis and that good history, we'll continue on.
Amen. Can you just pause for that? Let that sink in. It's good work, Diane. It would be great to actually get that on a slide at some point or something for our back pockets, because that's a thing. As a commissioner, I'm very proud of that. I think we all are. So,
Glad.
good work. Freedom Index.
Diane, this is another piece of the very same thing. Did you mention 81 areas?
81 areas for you to have youth turkey hunts.
Out of 81? That is just incredible.
That's more than half of our areas that we have.
That is just incredible. I mean, anyway, that's great to hear. Thank you.
So this slide is, again, our rural development timeline. We received 174 requests from the public and from staff this year between April and July. The staff reviewed those proposals and analyzed those requests. During the August through October period, we solicited and assessed input on those proposals from stakeholders and the public. And we're here today at the November meeting to present the draft rule proposals from that process. Between now and February, we will advertise the draft rules that you approved today in the Florida Administrative Register and continue our communication with the public. And in February, you would consider the rules for final adoption. And over the presentation, I'm going to cover 3 changes to what we call our statewide rules, and then I'm going to just summarize the area-specific rules. So the first change to the statewide rules is related to the wild turkey bag limit. The idea is to add some flexibility in that hunting opportunity. Currently, there's a seasonal bag limit for wild turkeys of 2 birds for the entire season. Our rules say that you can only take 1 of those birds on any given day during the season. The rule proposal is to allow both of those birds to be taken on any given day. To add some flexibility again for private lands, this would apply to private lands and public lands that are not in the FWC management area system. Again, this is for added flexibility, and we expect no significant increase in the turkey harvest and no decrease in wild turkey populations as a result. The second change to our statewide rules is regarding the boundary between hunting zones A and Z for deer hunting seasons. Let me see. I might be with the pointer here. The northern boundary of the zone between zones A and C is State Road 70. Zone A is the southern portion of Florida, and it's south of State Road 70. The proposal is to kind of cut off the corners of Zone A, and you see the red lines on the map would do that. They would move that zone boundary down and put that northeastern portion and that northwestern portion up into Zone C. The idea here is to better align the timing of the deer seasons in those particular areas with the deer breeding timing in those areas, based on the data. The change would affect deer seasons and fall turkey seasons. There would be no effect on the season timing in the FWC managed areas in the areas that are affected by the change or spring turkey season. This change is.
Can I ask a question there, Diane? I'm just concerned that that's going to cause confusion in the spring.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is an additional complication to the rules now, but we heard very clearly that from turkey hunters that they were not interested in the change applying to spring turkey season too. So I think, there's a good separation in time there, and I think that the folks hunting in the spring turkey will pay attention to, that significant boundary that affects the timing of their seasons. Something we can take a look at and watch for as this continues. This change was requested by hunters in the affected areas and is well supported by stakeholders.
Bobcats.
And then the last change to our statewide rules is to expand the hunting season for bobcats to add additional hunting opportunity. Currently, the bobcat hunting season runs from December 1st through March 1st, and the proposed change would extend the season through March 31st. The change would affect private lands and public lands that are not managed by FWC. Again, it's to add hunting opportunity. Our staff took a look at this and found that we expect no detrimental effect on bobcat populations, which are considered abundant and widespread throughout Florida. The current harvest on bobcats is considered very low, and we expect this change to have a very little effect on the harvest. So now I'll summarize for this slide and the next slide. I'll summarize the changes to our specific area rules. I kind of grouped these changes into three categories, and the first one is adding hunting opportunity. So on 29 areas, we would add hunts, days, species, or methods of take to existing hunts, or increase the quotas. We are proposing to reduce hunting opportunity on 2 areas, and those are to address resource concerns about a couple of related to game species. We propose reductions in hunting opportunity only to address resource concerns, user conflicts, landowner requests, or hunter preferences. And then the last category of these specific area rule changes is kind of the miscellaneous or other rule category, and these are to revise rules concerning roads, vehicles, horses, points of access, check stations, or camping opportunities. We've got 29 areas where those kinds of rule changes are included in the package. And on 7 areas, we're proposing to just adjust the hunt types or dates. No net gain or loss on those, just adjustments. I do need to mention here, for the record, we are also proposing in this presentation to make a change to the summaries in the background documents for Fish Eating Creek Wildlife Management Area. On that management area, the addition, we propose to add a small game season. And the language for that rule change needs to say that small game season applies only west of Highway 27. So by including that in the presentation, we'd be able to advertise it in that way. It was an oversight. We just discovered this oversight today. So that's where we are. The summaries of the rule proposals, again, were online for public comment from August 15th to October 7th. Stakeholders were notified through email blasts. About 60,000 folks were contacted by email for the opportunity to comment on these proposals. On any individual rule proposals, and there were 96 proposals, we received anywhere from hearing from either 0 individuals all the way up to 106 individuals, depending upon the proposals. But of those 96 changes, only 4 of them received 10 or more comments. And on those, the majority were in support of the rule change proposal. The commissioners, our recommendation is that you approve these proposals for rule amendments for advertising in the Florida Administrative Register, and give us any guidance or direction you might have as we continue working with the public and stakeholders between now and February. Again, the rules would come before you for final in February and take effect for the 2014-15 hunting season. And that concludes my presentation.
Thank you, Diane. Mr. Vice Chairman?
Mr. Chairman, we have 10 speakers. First 3 are Byron, Lyle, and Bill George.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners. I would like to comment on the turkey part of this. In the fall, your jakes are ganged up together and your mature birds are ganged up together. My concern is if you're allowed to harvest 2 per day, that you're going to have some flock shooting going on. The biggest bird I ever took with a 12.5-inch beard was in a flock of 9 longbeards. I swear they were all the same. And I had to wait, seemed like forever, but it was probably 3 or 4 minutes for one of them to get separated. where I didn't wound the other birds. A lot of times with ducks and turkeys and stuff, the turkey's a tough old bird. People shoot and say, I miss. Well, 9 out of 10 times they don't miss. They wounded the bird. And I've seen birds in Avon Park bombing range, hunting area, in particular, with just the people that body shot them that didn't get vitals. And you go to skin them or pick them, and they're just eaten up with gangrene there. A horrible, horrible death. I disagree with Ms. Zegman in one point that there won't be any more harvested. I had a fellow who's no longer welcome at my camp last spring. He was hunting with a friend of mine, and he harvested one bird one day, and next morning he harvested another bird, but he asked his friend to tell me that he had harvested that bird because he didn't want to quit hunting, because he had his two. And I didn't find out about this until later. And I think you'll find some of that going on too when you can harvest 2 birds, in one day. We've done a great job. Fish and Wildlife Commission's done a great job with the turkey population in this state. It's become a very viable population. I'd just like to see us keep it that way and not over harvest it. You're not going to, people that want to be outlaws and break the law, you're not going to change them. They're going to find a way around it. They're probably harvesting 3 or 4 a day anyway, right now. But I just think that might encourage the people that are semi-honest to harvest a little more than what they really are doing. Thank you.
Thank you, Byron. Lyle?
For the record again, Lyle McCandless speaking personally and President of Big Cypress Sportsman's Alliance and as a member of the Fish and Wildlife Commission's DMTAG Committee. Just a couple of brief, quick comments. As a member of the DMTAG Committee, I and several others had some pretty strong feelings about a particular item involving the north boundary of Zone A, the South Zone. Now, I chose to concede on this and go along with it, but I had this opinion that the northern boundary of the South Zone would be more appropriately Highway 80. That's more where the South Zone and the wetlands start and what have you, as opposed to 70. It seemed to me like the more appropriate boundary for the South Zone would be 70 where it currently is, 80 instead of 70. But again, I didn't choose to rock the boat on it anymore, but I'll bring it to your attention just in case one of you commissioners might want to take a look at that and have your own personal consideration of it. And the second item here, I recall several years ago that I was really surprised to have one of the FWC biologists state that the bobcats were responsible for about 57% of the fawn mortality. That really surprised me. So in my opinion, I almost think the bobcat should be in the range. I mean, if they have that big of an impact on the deer herd, the season on them should be very, very liberal. If them not even classified as like the other predatory animals. Just food for your thought. That's the comments I had. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Bob. Next up, Bill George. And Bill will be followed by John Rozier, Lori McDonald, and Mary Ann Weston.
Okay, my name is Bill George. Coming today, I want to talk about the turkey stuff for one of the items. The turkeys right now, I'm not really opposed to taking 2 a day, but it does take a little bit of concern when you get into a group and somebody just starts shooting. The first one's usually pretty good shot, and then after that it can get a little dicey. Some states require you to remove an animal from the hunting location prior to taking another animal. That might be something that might assist in that process. The other thing is on the public lands, as I was reading the rules, it's a little confusing. Certain wildlife management areas, such as Green Swamp West, where you have a paid special opportunity hunt, it should be made clear that if you've already been allocated the seat, that you should be able to allow to take the second bird if you've completed one permit and have the other. It's quite routine for people to have 2 different hunts in the same time period for an area like that.
The other area is if you're somebody who hunted on private land and you killed a bird, can you go on to a wildlife management area after you've just been guided on private land and go hunt and take your single additional bird on that? Or do you have to try and kill one on public land and then go get a second one on private land? You know, some of that just needs to be cleared up. The other thing I'd like to talk about is the different management areas don't always align with the zones that they're in. And I've been trying, I started last February in starting to address the commission and trying to get one particular area changed. I'm still working with staff on that and working through those issues and trying to get that resolved. But one of the things that I came into contact with when I was trying to address why it didn't get aligned was Green Swamp dates didn't get aligned because the Richland Dog Hunters Alliance didn't want the dates to change because the people from McCalla might come down and hunt their area, you know? And for that to be one reason why you don't get it, what I'd like to see is a document that anytime we have these rule changes, if there's something that's not aligned with the zone, we kind of have a reassurance of why that is, because there may be good reasons for it. Maybe the stakeholders of that particular area don't want it, or it could be something like the managing agency just won't allow it. But it should be clear as to why we can't manage it within the zones. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. Next up, John Rozier.
John Rozier again, Full Track Conservation Club of Data and the Everglades Coordinating Council. I'm wearing two hats right now. The Everglades Coordinating Council, just to comment on the zone change, we also feel that State Road 80 is a better zone boundary than State Road 70. And we've wrestled over this for the last year and a half. So, and the other item is the other rule change that's in there is the checkouts, the self-checkout. In fact, they had a picture of Rodenberger, which is where it's very apparent. And the Day Club and ECC is for that change in that rule. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, John. Lori?
Good afternoon. Lori McDonald. I'm the Florida Director for Defenders of Wildlife. I want to speak with you about the bobcat hunt. And first of all, for those of you who are not aware, Defenders of Wildlife is not a pro-hunting nor an anti-hunting organization. We make our decisions based on the selected species and also on the impacts to the other aspects of the natural community that may result. We're concerned about the bobcat and in large part because there's so little known about the bobcat. There's very little information to base decisions on, scientific information within the state. I think that a few studies that have been done are over a decade old. The bobcat is listed by CITES, the Committee on International Trade on Endangered Species. And they commissioned a study, which is, which you have, got your materials, but is available, done by Roberts and Crimmins. And actually the title of the study was Bobcat Population Status and Management in North America, Evidence of Large-Scale Population Increase. However, you'll see in this study that while the bobcat may be increasing in many states, several states do not have information for them, and Florida is a state in which it is reported that there's a decrease in bobcats. Again, this information is out there, available in a couple of different scientific journals. And I think basically what is happening is we really don't know that much about the bobcat situation. I'm not standing here today opposing this change, but I'm asking for, I guess, two things. One is that there needs to be more information collected on the bobcat. The tag, whether it's the trapping or the hunting, more information needs to be collected on each of the bobcats so that we have a better idea of what's happening and what the trends are. And also to note our concern that if this is in itself a trend, that they're going to be increased hunting on bobcat, we have to look at the cumulative impacts of that and throughout the various parts of the state. to see what the status truly is. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Lori. Next up, we have Mary Ann Westwood, Todd Hallman, and Newton Cook.
Good afternoon again. Again, I'm Mary Ann Westwood, the current president of the Palm Beach County Airboat and Half Track Conservation Club. And I'm also up here representing the hunters from Martin County, Florida. I actually live in Martin County, which is about 90 miles north of here. Thank you again for allowing me this opportunity to comment on the agenda items. The Palm Beach County Airboat and Half Track Conservation Club fully supports the rule change that modifies the zone boundaries between Zone A and C. And also on behalf of the Martin County hunters, we also fully support that rule change. And I'd also like to take this opportunity to thank Corey for acknowledging that the previous change in our hunting dates was an error, and has worked with the stakeholders and staff to get our hunting dates back in alignment with the ruts. I would also personally, and a lot of hunters will probably not like what I'm going to say, but I've the family's always been hunting, fishing, fished all over the country. And for the past 35 years, I've been out in the glades and hunting deer and seeing deer out here. And over the years ago, go out on the airboat, we'd jump off all kinds of deer. Today, I don't see any deer out there. I don't see any deer out there, unless you see them on TV. So I would like to, and even up in Martin County, where I live, years ago when I bought the property, I would have herds of deer come to my property, dozens at a time. Now it's very rare. And I think we've started working on that a little bit, the past rule change with the forked horn. So hopefully we don't get the spikes, or the hunters don't get the spotted fawns anymore. But personally, I would like to see a moratorium put on does. Stop harvesting the does. Maybe just for 5 years, or maybe just for 2 years. But the does are what's going to bring back the population. And another personal request also is on law enforcement. We do not have enough FWC law enforcement officers out in the woods. We have plenty out in the water, but we do not have enough to protect our resources in the woods. And I understand that, you know, the budget, it all goes to the water, you know, all comes from the water, but there's a lot of problems out in the woods because the law enforcement is not out there. Thank you again for your time.
Thank you. Todd? Hello, Todd.
Todd Allman, Florida Sportsman Conservation Association. We agree with staff on their recommendations and ask that you approve the proposals to go to be advertised. Especially, we agree with moving that boundary on the southeast corner of Palm Beach County and stuff. As Mary Ann said, Martin County for the last 4 years has lost out on the rut. When the rut's going on, there is no hunting. So I'm glad Corey looked at that and switching that boundary. And I'm not really sure about the 80. I know we talked about that when we did the season change dates, to moving everything down to 80. And I know there's a lot of private owners in there that didn't want it, and that was a big hold up on that. So, but we do agree with staff. Thank you. And we'll talk about law enforcement later.
Okay. Thank you, Todd. Next up, our last three speakers are Newton Cook, Frank Denninger, and Drew Martin.
Thank you again, Newton Cook. I enjoy getting up here and saying thanks to Diane and embarrassing Nick, because boy, have we opened up a lot of opportunity for Diane in that job. But of course, obviously, Dick laid the groundwork and made sure Diane had the position. But the fact of the matter is it seems like forever when we were at that meeting in Orlando, and the vote was that the greatest problem for loss of license sales in those days, they were dropping like rocks. Now it's stabilized. Was the not a place to go, and the loss of spontaneous hunting opportunity. In other words, on Saturday morning, you get up and say, you know, I'd like to take the kid hunting today. And you pick your guns up and go out to a local piece of public land and you go hunting. No quota permits. I applied for my next spring turkey permits 3 weeks ago. I mean, that's like 6 months in advance. That just drives away people from hunting. But so much of our public land has been opened in the last 3 or 4 years, our wildlife management areas, by this commission, to just picking up the gun and going hunting. Even Dupree, one of the most protected WMEs in the state, now has pick your gun up and go hog hunting. 3 3-day periods. Incredible. That place was so good.
It's a delight to hear. It's like a big puppy. You're going to stroke the puppy. The dog will wag its little tail.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All of us up
Well,
here.
some of you guys are new, you know. We keep having to retrain you guys. So,
Well,
I just want to be,
it's a little difficult. We get
I want
three
to be
different
sure you
governors.
understand.
Frequently
I
saying.
want to be sure you understand how much it's appreciated
That's
and how
marvelous.
much impact it has. It's incredibly important.
It's very encouraging. In 2004, several of us were here, and you just remember all the good progress this agency's made toward allowing many people in the state that hadn't been hunting before that now have an opportunity. It's great to hear.
Just think of the full migratory bird permits. We put in for about 20, 25 full migratory bird hunting seasons on wildlife management areas. The duck hunters, 60-day duck season. We've got some duck seasons, but we also got some full migratory bird seasons on a wildlife management area. That opens with snipe. It opens with dove, October 1st or 5th. It opens with dove, and it runs all the way into the spring with snipe. You open up an extra 100-day of hunting. And you don't realize what you're doing, but it means you can pick up your gun and go hunting for almost an extra 2 months on that type of money. No quota permits, no cost. So it's so important, and you guys and Diane and I should say Don Corners, who's worked real hard on that. It's very much appreciated. And last but not least, I want to say thank you to Corey, because I probably was one of the ones that beat him to death about that damn boundary line where we had the pine flatwoods mixed in with the marsh. And all that worked out well. The landowners on the west side seem to be happy with where it is. And I know the Martin County and our side over on the east side are very pleased with that boundary change between those zones. And again, thank you for staff for listening to the stakeholders. Thank you.
Thank you, Newton. Frank Denninger.
Hello, Commissioner Frank Denninger here, and I'm a member of the Jetport Conservation and Recreation Club down on the east side of the Big Cypress, and also a delegate to ECC, but I'm speaking for myself today. And as far as the draft rules go, I really support and love the idea of hunting bobcats. Hopefully one day it'll be happening in the Big Cypress, where they have records. Ms. McDonald is thinking we're lacking records, but Big Cypress has done studies and knows bobcats have hit deer hard. And as far as, forget the hunting issue, deer are also panther food. And, you know, it doesn't help not controlling predators when we've also got bears that are omnivorous, alligators, and other issues, pythons, that eat meat when they can. You know, a struggling fawn or something, a bear can nail. Bobcats nail them all the time. That's one of the bigger items they eat. And now we got coyotes. I don't even know anything about coyotes, but I've heard they're out there. I have never had the pleasure of seeing one in front of a scope. But anywho, I really do appreciate that direction being taken. And I want to thank Commissioner. I was watching this meeting at home and decided to come up here at 11:30 this morning. And I missed the Everglades issue to comment on, but I'll catch that somehow later. But I want to really thank and praise Commissioner Corbett for mentioning the word freedom In my recollection in many years, I haven't heard that word mentioned. And I mention it a lot, and people laugh at me like, oh, what are you talking about? We've got enough freedom. I said, well, no, we never have enough freedom because we've lost so much in my life due to mainly federal control of land in this state.
Please take that.
Pardon?
Please take that message, Frank. I can suggest you might end up, going up Washington Way.
I can't hear you. I didn't hear what you
walk
said.
right in there.
About the message. I didn't hear you.
Freedom.
Yes, big issue. And the other things mentioned earlier this morning about less regulation and oppression. Basically, someone got towards the word being, we're oppressed. And we've been saying it for years in Big Cypress. And now the dirty little devil details are coming out in surf, which I was proud to hear this discussion this morning, and the relentless persistence of what your goals are according to the Everglades paper and other issues on that issue. And it is a great thing. Hopefully everybody's willing to go to the wall, and including the state government, as far as if any legal action has to be taken to protect the flora and fauna. Because they are doomed. That's the word I would describe with the recent acknowledgments about what surf has really been about all the time. And what else? And one thing I heard, and I want to caution a little bit, Mr. Jablonski mentioned in reference to the strategic plan, I think, something about involving other states and other partners to get ideas and things like that from. Well, we get lots of ideas out in Big Cypress and on federal land from thousands and thousands of people. And personally, it kind of worries me. Sometimes I've heard on other issues, the FWC says, well, they do this in Minnesota or that in Wisconsin. It always worries me because we're so much different, at least in the south end of the state. And it's always apples and oranges in my mind, taking other people's advice that have different terrain. But anyway, thank you.
Thank you, Frank. Thank you. Next up, Drew Martin, and then our last speaker will be Albert Bryan.
Drew Martin, I'm here on behalf of the Sierra Club. I'm going to also comment on the bobcat rule, but I do want to mention one thing that came up, and that was the hunting of does. And I agree with the lady that if you're trying to preserve your population, that I would recommend that you follow her advice. I think that's good advice. I think hunters can tell the difference between a buck and a doe, and I think that would make a big difference if you're concerned about the deer population. One thing I agree, and I agree with what Byron said, and that is that the purpose of these regulations is to make sure you have a viable population. And I think that's your role, and I support that role. The Sierra Club is not against hunting. We do not oppose it, but I am concerned about some of the fact that I personally believe that hunting is primarily for those, and I believe Byron said that he shoots what he eats, and the purpose of hunting, in my opinion, is mostly for those who want to consume and eat the animals. I am concerned about hunting predators because predators have a viable role in the environment, and I think that's been proven over many, many years. Wildlife biologists have proven that animals such as bobcats play an important role in the environment. I am particularly concerned about the use of snares in this regulation because snares can catch any kind of animal. And that concerns me. It could catch somebody's pet, it could catch a doe, it could catch a fawn, and if somebody doesn't get back there and get that snare, the animals suffer. And so I would recommend that you remove snares. I agree with Ms. McDonald that there needs to be more science. I think that if you're going to allow hunters to take does, then I don't think you can blame the bobcats for the population of the deer. I think a lot of that is somewhat anecdotal. I would like to see the scientific evidence on that. So we are very concerned. Again, we support the overall regulation, but I do think that I would follow the lead and say that I recommend that those not be taken. Thank you.
Thank you. Lisa?
Okay, we have two more speakers, Albert Bryan, and our last would be Victor Mallow.
Hi, my name is Albert Bryant. If there's anything, we're trying to get a next generation involved here. Anything that we can do to ease up any regulation or something to get these kids involved.
You are spot on, because they're the future generation. We all know it. This whole entire commission is looking for the kids of this state and to get them away from these damn cell phones and allow them outside. And so anyway, you're spot on. And so we want to entice those kids, give them incentives rather than regulate.
Well, we want them to learn about the environment.
Yep.
If they can learn about the environment, they're going to preserve the environment. One problem we have in this country is that we have the dumbing down of America. And they just don't, they're stuck on, this is what I don't understand about Everglades National Park. You got 1.5 million acres and they say they're trying to preserve it. Here we got a town full of people over there that don't know which way is up. We need to get them out there. So anything we can do to get these kids out there. I have a camp out there, and
thank you.
And I open it up to wanting to get people out there and appreciate what's going on. If they appreciate it, then they'll protect it, and then we'll preserve it.
The more people we have like you that are for all of us that will open up and let kids come out, and that's why, frankly, Ray Waddell and Tom and our entire youth effort is looking at the future and saying they are our future. And
Ronnie,
it's marvelous. You read The Old Man and the Boy?
Sir?
Have you ever read the book called The Old Man and the Boy?
No, sir.
Pick it up and read it. It's a marvelous, it just goes back to the 1940s and 50s, and it's just it's a terrific book. And then you'll see as the grandfather grows older, but it's the very idea of taking young children out and allowing them to hunt. So thank you for your comments.
Well, I guess my minute ran out, but we had a youth group at our church. We had taken 25 kids out there, and it's a diverse group of, from all over the world. And, they got that exposure, and one kid came back up to me and said, when are we going back out again? That day we had harvested a deer, and we were sitting around a campfire, and, I get, a lot of times people don't realize you only have a little window of time with kids. They grow up quick. And to make a long story short, when you're laying on your deathbed someday, they're going to say, remember the day we went hunting? It's not the day, I worked overtime or something like that. It's the day we went out there and hunted. And we had this experience.
So spot on. I think all of us relate so much to what you just said. And that's what all the youth camps and our whole outreach is. A good example, our executive director right here has a young son and took him out and he shot his first dove. They're dove all over the place. And as you know, they only live X months anyway, and there's zillions of them, hopefully. But the reality is he loved that. And he remembers that. That's his first bird. And it's that type of thing that we have for all of us to say, this is marvelous. So I've taken up a good share of your time, so go ahead.
Well, don't worry about that. Oh, you pushed the green button again. People don't realize we have so much diversity in Florida. There's so much to experience. We have the Keys down there, and we have the fishing. We have the Everglades. We have Lake Okeechobee. We have the beaches. Behind my mom's house, there's an incredible reef. There's just so much to do here. And, got to get people out there to experience this, and just, I'm singing to the choir.
Thank you.
So thank you.
Victor Mallow. That was Victor? Oh, okay. That's what I thought.
Wow, thank you. Thank you very much for this opportunity. I want to thank all the members of the public that are here. I'm a hunter. I've been hunting in South Florida my entire life. Since I was 5 years old, my dad put a shotgun in my hand. And I took my first rabbit, I think, at about 7 years old. So going along with what's being said, yes, great memories. These are good memories for our children. I have 2 boys of my own. Wanted to talk a little bit about what happened to us just a weekend ago over at Rocky Glades. I would ask that somehow that if we could work with the South Florida Water Management District to open up some of these gates. I got a 10-year-old and a 6-year-old and my wife, all 4 of us. So we went out dove hunting, and we had to walk a very long distance. Now, and I mean somewhere to the tune of about 1,200, 1,300 yards just to get to just down the rocky road. There's no access. Kids almost dehydrating. They didn't want to carry their guns anymore, and I'm having to carry guns now. I'm like, just to make it back.
Yeah, but that's good. That'll toughen them up.
It sure will. It sure will. So that, if we can somehow figure out a way of maybe getting some kind of coded system or where we can open up the gates as hunters and be issued some kind of codes. And I spoke to a gentleman, I think it was by the name of Jerry Krenz, who told me that the reason why those gates are there is because that the people are coming back there and dumping, illegally dumping stuff in those areas. And I understand that there has to be some, happy medium that we can come to give us a little more access to certain areas.
Yeah, if you want to, when you get finished, and I won't take any of your time, if you've got somebody for you to see when you're finished.
Great. Thank you. And that's what happened to us out there. The other thing is the amount of hunting that we're allowed. It's very, very weak, I think. It needs some revamping. Holy Land, Rottenberger, Everglades, Francis Taylor. General gun, which is, I guess, the most popular of the hunts. Next to bow, I understand bow season. I'm a bow hunter as well. But we only have 15 days out of the year to hunt it. And that's October 5th through the 20th. And we'd like some more hunting. We'd like to maybe do some hunting comparable to some of the other WMAs up north. And we don't have many places down here to hunt. So when you do shut it down because of high water, it kind of hurts. The other areas like Fish Eating Creek is the other area that's general gun was October 4th and 6th and October 18th through the 20th. That's weekends. And it's just a couple of days out of the year that we're allowed to hunt. And I'm requesting at this time that we revamp these areas. Give us some more hunting. Give us a couple months of hunting out of the year. Maybe hunt during the week as well, because the weekends, some people can't hunt on the weekends.
You know how we're going to help you out?
Sure.
If you just turn, as you walk away here now, to Diane, who's right over there, and she'll be able to help you privately, okay?
Great, thank you, Diane.
Thank you very much for your comments.
Thank you.
We appreciate that.
Those were all the speakers, Mr. Chairman.
All righty. Commissioners, we need to have a motion and a second to approve the rule amendments for advertising. And yeah, if there's any particular, okay, so move.
Yeah, I'll move for approval.
Second?
Second.
Okay. Okay.
Now we can discuss it.
Ron, comment?
Yeah, I have
Sure.
some comments.
All right.
First of all, I want to thank staff for their hard work on this. I like the new boundaries because it seems like a very high percentage of our stakeholders agree with the boundary. Is that correct, Diane? I think the boundaries really increase the opportunities because it's more in line with the rut. Is that it? So that's a positive. I like more opportunities, less regulation, and like Frank said, more freedom. Those are all good things. The things that I'm concerned about, as like a turkey hunter myself, is the 2 turkeys per day. I've been hunting turkeys all my life, and it's kind of interesting when you have 2 hunters, and it's all about, with me personally, the opportunity and the skills of calling turkeys in. It's not how many I'm shooting, because I was always raised to only shoot what I would eat. But I've noticed when I've had 2 hunters,
And of course, the first guy shoots, and then the other guy shoots, and normally the second turkey, you may kill him, but you normally don't get him. And that's a little bit of a concern for me, because I do a lot of turkey hunting. I think in most cases, if a guy's hunting and he's got two gobblers coming in, he shoots one and turns to the other one, I'm not sure you're gonna get both turkeys. So I have some concerns on that. I think on the bobcat, I love bobcats, to be honest with you. But the main thing I'm looking at on the bobcat, I don't think we've had enough studies and enough surveys to really understand what is our bobcat population. Now, I know a lot of hunters don't like bobcats because they eat turkeys, they eat what we hunt. But I think it's important that we're always in the balance of nature too. It's important to have a balanced food chain for our environment. And so, and I will tell you that I have 8,000 acres in the Big Cypress, and I have 26 trail cameras, and I have very few bobcats in a very pristine area. And I'm speaking mainly for South Florida, maybe different up in the other parts of the state. But I get pictures of 10 panthers before I get one bobcat. Very interesting. So I think before we extend anything on the bobcat, that we need to have reasonable surveys on the population. I think they're an important animal to the food chain. And without a balanced food chain, you don't have a good environment.
Okay.
So, what was it on the doe hunting, Diane? What were we talking about? Did we have any issues on that?
I think it was just a speaker made a suggestion that we considered that there not be a doe season, but I don't think it was in the rules.
Yeah.
Okay. So my main two concerns at this point is one person shooting two turkeys, and that opportunity will come where there's two turkeys or three turkeys all walking at once. You shoot one and you wound the other. Seems like you could go back the next day and have that great experience to call one in, the skill of it, and still be able to have more hunting opportunities. It just wouldn't be all in one day, and I'm very concerned about extending the bobcat until we have more information on that particular species.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman. Ron, did you ever think that your panthers were eating your bobcats?
Could be. That's all I see is panthers.
And it also
I don't see no bobcats.
it sounds like you're advocating increasing the turkey limit to 3, 2 one day and 1 the next.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, each one of us throughout the state, we come from different areas, and we all have different views, and certainly Commissioner Bergeron's entitled, as any commissioner is, to his separate view.
Certainly, I didn't mean to imply otherwise.
But we all have different views.
Yeah, to me, the turkey and the bobcat changes really speak to additional expansion of hunting opportunities. Not everybody has a chance to go turkey hunting 2 days in a row or even 2 days a season, but they might have an opportunity to kill 2 turkeys in 1 day. And if you do it in a sportsmanlike manner, you're not going to increase the chances of just wounding the second bird, if you're hunting ethically as you should be. The bobcat issue, we're only talking about expanding it, I think, 29 or 30 days. It's not like we're opening it up to year round. So I think both of those are things that we should consider doing. I did have a question, Diane, about the comments regarding the doe or the antlerless deer. I know on private lands, that's a week.
7 days, yes.
What is it on public lands? Is it different?
It varies by management area. On some management areas, there's no take of antlerless deer. On some areas, or female deer does. On some areas, it's allowed only during the archery season. Some areas, it's by permit only. It just varies with what we know about the deer population on a given area and the management objectives for the area and what we've heard from the hunters in terms of preferences on that area. Now, I will say that this DME project that you're going to hear about next is taking a look at what the goals and objectives are for deer populations in different parts of the state. And so harvest of does is key to achieving population objectives. And so we're taking another look at that more locally, more regional basis. And managing the doe harvest is key, and all of those, the tools available for managing that harvest are all on the table.
So is that something that really your technical assistance groups really take up those issues because they're more familiar with their area? Would that be the case?
Yes.
Okay, that's what I needed to know.
And if I might make a comment about the bobcat population, we are going to add, the additional harvest opportunity is hunting only. The extra days would not include trapping opportunity. We do keep track of the trapping harvest through some means for monitoring the fur bearer trade, the sightings tags for bobcat trapping, and then we're going to add a question to our small game hunting survey so that we can monitor bobcat hunting harvest in the future. So we are taking a look at ways to get a little bit better finger on the harvest, which for bobcats.
So Mr. Martin's concern about snaring, that's not really the case, is it?
That's correct. It would not add additional snaring opportunity.
Okay, so if there was a concern about that, that's not up for consideration.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, if I may too, Diane,
Thank you.
my memory, I haven't looked at this lately and we haven't discussed it, but as far as data on bobcat harvest, I believe we do have some check station data on some areas, public areas where they've been legal.
Yes.
Do we have a feel for what that shows? Because my experience shows that the harvest is very incidental to other things and very few go out with very minimal levels where we have data.
Yes, absolutely.
Yes, thank you.
Is that
Thank
because
you,
we
Diane.
don't have many of them, or?
The bobcats throughout the state are minuscule, minuscule. Any other commissioners have comments? And that's what we'd like to do here. I will wait, but I've listened to Commissioner Pretty, and I tend to agree with exactly what you said. Chuck, do you have any different views?
I don't.
All right. Bo, and it's a draft rule anyway, it's purely a draft rule. Bo? All right. Yep. Thank you. And that's what we'd like to do is, it's a draft rule. We need a motion to approve. All right. Thank you.
Are we making a motion to, I'd like to make a motion I could vote for it, but it may not agree with anybody else.
No, you have a right to disagree. We have several commissioners.
I do?
Well, I guess my question would be if, for example, if Commissioner Bergeron had a segment he did not agree with, but he agreed with everything else, how would you want to handle that? Would he just have to vote against the whole thing?
Mr. Director.
Yeah, if you've got, you've already got a motion and you have a second. At this point, you could offer up an amendment to that, or if you wanted to just put it up for a vote and there was an issue that you didn't approve or didn't like on it, you could just vote it down.
Well, I don't want to vote the whole thing down, but I do have a concern about shooting 2 turkeys in one day and the bobcat.
That's it.
So,
that's your
you could
the rest of it I like.
Then you can just express your concern, or you could offer up an amendment.
Okay.
Because I think we hear to cut through this whole thing, Ronnie, I think we hear your concern. Okay, you're one individual. We have the rest of the group that represents the entire state. That's your individual view. And we take a motion here, the motion's for the entire state, and you just object. You can just object.
That's what we. What should I say?
It's a democracy. Yays and nays.
Well, okay, well then let me make a statement that I can't vote for it.
That's fine.
If the opportunity of two turkeys, and I'm very concerned about the bobcat, extending the hunting season, because we always pride ourselves on science-based and making kind of decisions, and I don't think we have the proper information on the bobcat. And as I said on my place, I see 10 panthers.
So you're going on record, which is clear, you're going on record, and I think we've heard.
Well, I'm going on record based upon looking at 26 cameras, and I see 10 panther that are, and one bobcat maybe. That's my record.
That's fine. We are flooded with bobcats in our land, so.
Well, maybe it could be certain zones where y'all, but I know down in the southern, what is it, zone A, on my place, very few bobcats. So,
all right, I think you've stated your position, which is what you wanted to do.
yes, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commander.
All right. All right, once again, we needed a motion. We've already hit the motion. Had a second. All those in favor? Those against?
Okay.
Democracy in action. Perfect.
Right.
All right, Corey, you're next. We have the Deer Management Unit Zone D. All righty. Corey, thank you.
Thank you.
We have to see if we get, there we go. We got it up.
Good afternoon, Chairman, Commissioners. Today I will be presenting proposed changes to deer hunting regulations for Zone D. The FWC conducted an extensive public outreach and input process in Zone D to present the concept of deer management units, DMUs, to stakeholders and to receive comments about deer management preferences. As a result of this outreach process, FWC is considering rule proposals that would implement greater antler regulations and change the number and timing of antlerless deer days, doe days, for Zone D. These proposals are part of a larger project aimed at managing deer at a finer geographic level with greater stakeholder involvement using deer management units, DMUs. At the state level, deer management is an application of the public trust doctrine. And in order to apply this doctrine most effectively, we worked with the Deer Management Technical Assistance Group, the DMTAG, to develop a strategic plan for deer management to guide FWC staff efforts in managing deer from 2008 to 2018. And at the core of the strategic plan is the idea of managing deer at a more local level using deer management units in consultation with stakeholders. A localized approach to deer management is needed to meet deer management plan goals and objectives. A deer management unit approach to managing deer harvest was identified as the most important strategy by both staff's deer team and our DMTAG. Deer biology, habitat, and stakeholders differ depending on where you are in Florida. And that's the reason why it's so important to go to a DMU management model. And many other states manage deer and other critters at the unit level. So here's a map of Zone D and its two deer management units. We have DMU D1 is south of Interstate 10. It's this crosshatched area. And DMU D2 is north of Interstate 10, right along in there. So Zone D will continue to be the foundation for the season timing, whereas the units will be used for harvest type regulations and population management and other preferences of stakeholders. To begin the public outreach process, the FWC contracted with Mark Duda of Responsive Management to conduct a scientifically designed phone survey of hunters, farmers, and residents of Florida to assess their opinions and attitudes of deer management issues. We then contracted with Normando Associates, a consulting firm out of Gainesville, Florida, to facilitate 3 public meetings, 2 online webinars, an online presentation, and an online survey to gain additional input on stakeholder preferences for deer management. In addition to that outreach, we also had biological data that we had on harvest, and all that information combined provided the foundation for DNU-specific information that a technical assistance group made up of stakeholders, 23 for this zone and this effort. They considered all of this outreach effort, both from the Duda phone survey, the online poll, all the public meetings, and as well as the biological data, and they developed goals and objectives for the 2 units in Zone D. And then staff reviewed those goals and objectives and began rulemaking, and the proposed rules are what came out of this process so far. So here's a pretty busy figure, but to point out some of the key components here is that we have Unit D1 south of I-10 on the left side and Unit D2 north of Interstate 10 on the right side. These are hunters up top, residents in the middle, and farmers at the bottom. And red is they would like to see the deer population decrease over the next 5 years. Yellow is keep it the same, and green is increase it. You can see, generally speaking, in DNU D1, south of Interstate 10, hunters tend to want to see the deer population increase. Residents tended to want to see the deer population either stay the same or increase. And farmers were kind of split in between decrease and keep the same or increase. Whereas in D2, hunters were more apt to want the deer population to increase and stay the same still. However, you notice that residents in D2 were more likely to want the deer population to decrease, and farmers, again, were more likely to want the deer population to decrease. We also had an online poll, and this was open to anyone who had internet access, who could go online. And from this survey, the deer population size, the question was, how would you like the deer population size managed for the next 5 years? And you can see that the majority of respondents favored increasing the deer population or keeping the same amount. Now back to the Duda phone survey. A majority of Zone D hunters support antler point regulations designed to increase the number of larger bodied and larger antlered bucks available for harvest. Over 82% in D1 south of Interstate 10 and 77% in D2 north of Interstate 10. And according to the online poll that we had, when asked if the respondents would support antler regulations in order to increase the number of bucks in the deer population, the majority also indicated that they would support such. 81% in D1 and 77% in D2. To summarize public input, residents generally view deer positively and have few negative interactions with deer. Farmers in general would like to see the deer population either slightly or substantially decrease. Hunters in general want to increase the deer population, increase the proportion of bucks to does, increase the number of bucks in the population, and increase the size or age structure of bucks. And as we mentioned, the technical assistance group comprised of stakeholders, primarily hunters and farmers, developed goals and objectives that were the reason for today's proposals. And now here are the goals and objectives that are being addressed by today's proposal. And I just wanted to point out the two objectives in blue, and the first one being implement an antler restriction that protects the majority of 1.5-year-old bucks while allowing harvest of bucks at least 2.5 years old. And then the next objective was to increase flexibility in days for access to antlerless deer hunting without negatively impacting the doe population. Remember, these were developed by stakeholders, these objectives. The antlerless deer season for Zone D is currently 7 days and runs from December 26th through January 1. The proposed changes to the antlerless deer season for Unit D1, south of Interstate 10, would include 4 days spread out over 2 popular holiday weekends. And for Unit D2, north of Interstate 10, the proposal would spread the antlerless deer season out over 4 weekends, one being during muzzleloading gun season. And as Diane mentioned, antlerless deer days usually do not apply to our WMAs. The current harvest regulations for Zone D has a 128-day season. Antler deer allowed to be taken during the muzzleloading gun, the general gun, and a portion of the crossbow season. And antlerless deer can be taken during the archery and crossbow season and 7 days of the antlerless deer season. And WMAs are more restrictive because of their increased levels of use. And again, here are the proposed the regulation proposal for to change the antlerless deer days. Now, for harvest management of bucks, our current approach in Florida is to allow bucks to be managed for maximum sustained yield. This means that we are conservative on our antlerless, on our doe harvest, and allow a liberal harvest of young bucks, our 1.5 year and older bucks. And an alternative approach to this management is to manage for biologically balanced deer herds, where there are regulations in place that protect 1.5 old bucks and allow them to build up the buck population and allow them to be recruited into older age classes. Antler point regulations can be used for manipulating the population size, age structure, and to improve the proportion of bucks to does. The draft rule proposals for antler point regulations, the purpose is to increase the buck population, to increase the proportion of bucks to does. It's something we heard a lot about from hunters at our public meetings and online comments. They increase the chances of seeing and harvesting larger bodied and larger antlered deer. And this table shows the percent of each age class that would be protected from harvest by the proposed antler point regulations. You can see in Unit D1, south of Interstate 10, a 2-point on a side regulation, otherwise known as a forked antler regulation, would, in combination with the existing 5-inch rule, would protect 83% of the 1.5-year-old bucks while allowing the harvest of majority of the 2.5 and older age class. And remember, that was the objective of the technical assistance group. And in Unit D2, we are proposing a 3 points on the side regulation. The habitat in D2 is more productive, and the antlers respond accordingly. So to protect a similar amount of each age class as the other unit, it has to be a larger or 3 on the side versus 2 on the side. And you can see it protects 89% of the 1.5-year-old bucks, 32% of 2.5. So the majority of 2.5 and older bucks would be available for harvest. And I want to point out that this is not trophy deer management. This is managing for biologically balanced deer herds. And trophy deer management usually entails protecting bucks from harvest until they're at least 4.5 years old or older when they reach their maximum antler potential. Again, this slide here covers the proposed antler point regulations. D1, 2 points on the side. D2 is being proposed to be 3 points on the side. The proposal is for hunters under 16 years of age, that's kids 15 and under, would be exempt from the antler point regulations in both the deer management units and on our wildlife management areas, except by area-specific regulation. And the proposals would apply to all WMAs within each DMU. Some WMAs currently have more restrictive antler point regulations in place, and those would remain. Now I'm going to talk about the public feedback on the proposals themselves. The surveys you've seen before were the initial outreach, and now this is when we put the rural proposals out. Based on an online poll as of earlier this week, we had a high level of support among respondents for antler point regulations in both the units. In D1, that support was 76%. We had 1,200 respondents on that survey, which is very high for our survey responses, our online polls. And for Unit D2, north of Interstate 10, we had 63% support, and that number of respondents taking that poll were 1,185. So we have good numbers on these online polls. The online poll also indicated support among respondents who say they hunt Blackwater regularly at 53% support. However, dog hunters in Blackwater WMA have expressed opposition to a 3 points on the side antler point regulation. The online poll indicates a high level of support among respondents for the antlerless deer day proposal for Unit D2 north of Interstate 10. That's going to 8 days over 4 weekends at 68%, while there's less support in Unit D1, where it's 2 weekends, 4 days during the gun season at 48%. The process of developing DMU proposals for Zone D has gone very well, with good coordination between staff and stakeholders. Public participation has been positive and has helped to strengthen the proposals. There seems to be widespread public support for this project, and hunters are requesting other improvements to deer management in Florida consistent with FWC's strategic plan. We are requesting approval to advertise the draft rules and for a final public hearing at the April 2014 Commission meeting in Tallahassee. If adopted in April, the proposed rules would apply to the 2014-2015 hunting season. We would also like to have any direction or guidance for staff as we continue working with the public. And this concludes my presentation.
Corey, thank you very much. It's a very good presentation.
Corey, the reason for, I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, I just wanted to point out the reason for doing it in April is because that meeting will happen in Tallahassee, which will make sure that everyone that's in that area, make it easier for them to travel to the meeting and participate. So rather than, that was my understanding at least, is that we could otherwise maybe even do it sooner than that, but we want to make sure the stakeholders have every opportunity to.
And that's very well said. It's all North Florida.
Yes, sir. Director.
In that regard, if I may, I was speaking to Commissioner Blonsky. He had to step out, but on his behalf, he had asked that we consider coming back in February, just an update on this and what we're hearing and where this is. And so that there's another opportunity if people in that area while it's still draft, want to come in and make a comment or ask questions, we could do it, and then still go final consideration in April. So if commissioners are okay with that, we'll make that our plan.
Thank you, the North Florida area. Now we have a number of speakers in the public. Commissioner Pretty.
Okay, the first three speakers are Byron Meharry, Lyle McCandless, and Brad Wilnecker.
Thank you. Let me be clear, I'm speaking as an individual. The Everglades Coordinating Council has not taken a position on this. It's a little out of our geographic area. But I think we're setting the stage for the other DMUs in the state, for A and B and C. And according to a recent conversation with Corey, I don't want to misquote him, but I think they're considering doing B and C together, which kind of blows my mind, because if you're going to consider different DMUs, why would you lump them back together? I'm not a trophy deer hunter, and I heard Corey say this wasn't for the purpose of raising trophy deer, but that will be part of the outcome, part of the consequences, good or bad. I get the thrill of hunting, whether it's a 5 or 6 inch spike, or doe during doe season, or an 8-point with a big spread. And I'd just like to throw a word of caution out there. These surveys, we had, in the DIMTAG, had proposed a tag and reporting system here a year and a half or 2 years ago, because we felt like we didn't have enough information to make intelligent decisions. Well, staff got busy and came up with different surveys, and they feel it's more accurate. I'm not sure that I agree with that. So sometimes you have to protect people from themselves. And I think, in my mind, this falls in that category. Yeah, we'd like bigger, more mature bucks, bigger and more bucks. But you can have more bucks, but you wouldn't necessarily be able to hunt more bucks with these more stringent rules. So I just throw that out there as a word of caution. We'll see when, I know the tag meetings have occurred in Zone A, and will occur, I think, in January or February for Zone B and for Zone C. And we'll see what comes of them. But I think that, again, just to throw it out, I don't want this to set a precedent that we're going to rubber stamp it right down the road for all of the zones and all of the DMUs. We had been told right along on a regular basis that the DMU rules would not affect the existing management area rules, which were set. And I remember Rusty McKeaton, who's head of a big dog hunting club up in that area, mouth fell open when the proposal came out at the DMTAG meeting that it was going to change the black border rules, which they hunt a lot up there. So as it turns out, as your slides state, that the DMU, this D zone DMU, is going to affect all the management areas that fall within that. So it is changing the rules on the management area. Anyway, just a word of caution. I'll throw it out there. Thank you.
Lyle McCandless.
For the record, one more time, I'm Lyle McCandless, speaking as individual, President Big Cypress Sportsman's Alliance, and as a member of the FWC DIMTAG group. As a member of the DIMTAG group, I represented the DIMTAG group in the tag groups that met a couple times down in Clewiston, and we had a conference call set up for the upcoming A-zone ruling. And I'll have to say that what we were able to observe about the ongoing process of this issue in the D zone, it helped us in establishing what we thought was reasonable in the South zone. I saw one thing in particular here that I overlooked, that I made a note of. One of our big issues down there was this thing about getting the youth more involved. And I saw one of the items there a while ago, and regardless of what ended up being the rule on antler points, 16-year-old and under would be exempt from that. So I'll make that known in my input for the Zone A situation. So, but other than that, I'm involved in the A zone. and looking forward to the process helping hunting in Florida. Thank you.
Thank you, Rob.
You owe me a minute too.
Well done. We like that expediency.
Brad Wilnecker, and after Brad, we've got Bill George, Newton Cook, and Frank Denninger.
But with the various speakers come to the front, by the way, so you can move on. Go ahead.
Good afternoon, Commissioner, Mr. Wiley. First, I want to thank Diane and her team, Corey, Louie, Steve, and Paul Shine, which isn't here. They have worked very close with the Southeastern Dog Hunter Association with these proposals. Hello, my name is Brad Wilnecker, and I traveled here from Pensacola, Florida today, representing the Southeastern Dog Hunter Association members for public land on Blackwater State Forest and the Scambia River. Southeastern Dog Hunter Association overwhelmingly supports managing the buck age harvest and proceeding with APR. Southeastern Dog Hunter Association reflects overwhelming support of the DMU 1 management plan of 2 points on one side or Fort Horn rule. Southeastern Dog Hunter Association members, public land stakeholders overwhelmingly suggest the DMU 2 APR proposal is excessive, judging in the different styles of deer hunting in DMU 2, as well as being a regulation issue for law enforcement because of the close proximity between DMU 1 and DMU 2. Southeastern Dog Hunters Association members, as well as non-members that hunt Eglin Air Force Base, as well as DMU 1 areas, have concerns implementing a different APR in DMU 2. Hunters have concerns these measures will max out Eglin Air Force Base, Jackson North and South Still Hunting Units, Sykes Quality Dog Hunting Management Unit, Met Still Hunting Unit, and Choctaw East and West Dog Hunting Unit, where hunters and the deer herds will suffer. Southeastern Dog Hunter Association members humbly ask that the FWC considers implementing a 2 point on one side fort rule across the board in DMU 1 and DMU 2 on public land. Can we take more of a not such extreme approach and more of a phased approach with a 2 points on one side APR and start immediately collecting buck harvest info and even possibly look into quality deer hunting management areas where hunters can check in kills for harvest information. This information would support such a dramatic change of APRs to 3 points on one side, going from a 5-inch rule. Again, CETA appreciates the FWC stance and the future of APRs and hope we can all work together on a consistent approach in DMU 1 and 2 so this can be implemented immediately. Thank you.
Thanks, Brad. Bill George is next. Bill's still here. Okay, Newton Cook. And Newton will be followed by Frank Denninger, and then Manley Fuller would be our last speaker. No, I'm sorry. Next to last speaker, the last speaker is going to be Albert Bryan.
Thanks, Commissioner. I just wanted to quickly comment that as a member of DMTAG, fully support staff's suggestion on this. These things have been discussed, rediscussed, and rediscussed over a number of months, and I think it's been well vetted. And I just want to say I support Corey and staff on this particular route. Thank you.
Thank you, Newton. Next, Frank Denninger.
Frank Denninger, again with the Jetport Conservation and Recreation Club and ECC, but speaking on behalf of myself. It was interesting. I'm quite worried about this advancement into DMUs and APRs and things like that. Down where I come from, I for one and heavily don't agree with the 3-point rule, 4-point rule, or anything like that. I'm satisfied to have done all my life with the 5-point rule. I'm more of a meat hunter. I don't hunt trophies, but every once in a while, sooner or later, you get a trophy down there. 16, 18-inch wide bucks do grow there. And in Big Cypress, at least, or the Fakahatchee they used to, they still do. We don't get to hunt them. But it's like years ago, I said at one of these meetings, when Frank Montalbano, the former chief biologist, spoke one day, he explained clearly, you can manage deer for quantity or a horn. And this matches what he referred to as managing for horns, you know. And every hunter, I mean, I've seen surveys put out to the public here with pictures of 3 or 4 big bucks standing on the cover of the survey. And that to me is bait for a hunter to jump on, I want to see more big bucks, let's get more big bucks, this, that, and the other, which I don't agree with. It's ethical to shoot a deer just because he's got big horns. But I've always hunted down here, and you learn to take what the nature presents to you down here, because you may only see 1 buck a year. And if you gotta let them go, it don't make you feel good. And it'll cost a lot of other hunters, not so much younger ones, but hunters will lose what they consider a successful day of hunting many times, looking for this minimum APR. But I did like the idea of letting the kids off the hook. And this is self-serving, but I'm 65 now. And where I hunt on 700,000 acres of land in Florida, I go by federal rules that drastically limits any vehicular assistance for access, whether you're handicapped, old, young, or whatever. So possibly if it ever happens when we start doing DMU stuff down south, we think about an older person exemption, 55 or 65, wherever that line is drawn legally and state record. That would be, I think, a good idea. And I'm not saying I'm not fit. I try hard when I'm hunting. I hunt as hard as I can. And I still hunt on foot, and I'm doing exercises now, which are really paying off this year. I ain't bragging or nothing, but I feel today, in the first day of hunting season, I felt like I did on the last day of hunting season, the last few years. Major difference. And also, I mean, I've heard people say that a lot of hunters are represented on bean tag and things like this. I don't really believe all hunters are represented on bean tag. It's people who are selected to be on the committee that have a lot of their own viewpoints on how things are done. And there's a large silent majority out there that are affected, and things, when things are done, they hate. And I mean, hunters hate things when they don't agree with them. That's going to affect your recruitment or sustaining recruitment in the future too, depending on how things go. And in South Florida, while people are waiting for APRs to be met by a deer herd, there's 160 poachers out there hunting 724, 365, and being funded and supported by the state and federal government. And they don't quit killing, day, night, or anytime. And that's over 5,000 or so deer a year. Thank you.
Thank you, Frank. Manley Ford, followed by Albert Bryan.
Commenting on the Zone D proposed regs in the Panhandle, the Florida Wildlife Federation would like to thank the FWC staff, Corey Morey, for doing this worthwhile project. Several legislative sessions ago, the Federation and other groups promoted successfully with the legislature a $5 deer stamp for deer hunters. Money generated from this stamp was used to enhance deer management in Florida and to help find out what Florida's hunters wanted. Your staff worked with Mark Duda and Responsive Management to find out via analysis that a significant majority of hunters in the Panhandle support antler restrictions and want more flexibility to take doe deer. So we ask you to support the staff's recommendation in Zone D, and also ultimately we would like you all to consider the commission, this is not commenting on Zone D, but ultimately we would like, this is across the state, to consider seed tag limits for deer like many other states do. Thank you.
Thank you, Manley. Albert. And this will be our last speaker.
Okay. I have your attention then. About 10 or 15 years ago, I think you guys were either the game commissioner or you just became the FWC.
we had a meeting trying to figure out why this honey dropping off in Florida. And, you know, they were looking at all these different aspects, you know, because a lot of people still hunt, but they're going out of state. And so back then I was the president of Dade County Full Track Club. And I thought about it, I talked to a lot of people. And the consensus I had was when we had the quota system, that really, you know, it kind of took out the spontaneity of hunting and, you know, you had to plan for it, you know, and I forgot to do this and, you know, whatever. You know what I mean? But if we could revisit the quota system, try to open it up and make it more user-friendly, open it up to where guys can hunt together, you know, in their groups and stuff like that, I think it would really help. So I appreciate that thought. Thank you.
I believe that's the end of public speakers on this motion. I have a motion. We would need a second. We need someone to propose the motion. And a second. So?
I'll move for approval.
Move for approval. Second?
I'll second.
Second? No. Any discussion?
I had a question. Corey, if I remember back to some of the graphs that you showed regarding responses to the surveys, I'm not sure if that's what led to 2 points minimum in one zone and 3 in the other. And I'm just wondering what impact would that really make if you made both zones 2 point minimums?
Yeah, that's a great question. And if you recall, the one objective was of the technical assistance group was to protect the majority of 1.5-year-old bucks while allowing the harvest of 2.5-year-old and older bucks. Well, because you know, we didn't talk so much, we talked about it earlier this year about the units being based on habitat roughly. And so the habitat productivity in D1 south of Interstate 10 is less productive. And that productivity comes out in the antler characteristics of the yearling bucks and older bucks, as well as the body sizes and the population rate of growth and the current deer density on the ground there. And so that's why the proposals are different for the 2 units. To accomplish pretty much the same thing, you have there would need to be a 4th antler rule at 2 points on the side south of Interstate 10. Whereas if that 2 point on the side was implemented north of I-10, it would only protect about 60% of the 1.5-year-old bucks, which we get into the area of high grading, which means we're taking the high-end bucks and leaving the low-end bucks, and that's something biologically we would want to avoid. So it's not from the surveys why those are different. It's based on the biology in those 2 areas and the productivity of the habitat.
All right, commissioners. We've had a motion. All those in favor? Aye. Those not? Okay. Thank you. Our next motion, our next issue, Jackie Falls. Jackie's going to come forward, and our next report is the legislative affairs and our legislative issues. Jackie, we welcome you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Miss Tallahassee.
Oh, well, how's my hair? I have a presentation PowerPoint that Tim is pulling up. This afternoon, I want to present to you some additional issues that we are requesting for you to approve for our 2014 session legislative package. But before I get started, I wanted to let you know that the issues that you approved in the September meeting, we've submitted them and we have sponsors for the bill. Senator Charlie Dean will be our Senate sponsor and Representative Tom Goodson will be our House sponsor. They have not been assigned numbers yet, but we will get that to you as soon as possible. We have, actually, the proposals today are license and/or fee repeals. There are 7 of them. The first one deals with fees that the commission has authorized to assess for hunters on U.S. Forest Service lands. The fees are $5 for those who are 18 years of age and older, and $2 for those who are under 18 years of age. They have not been assessed since 1978. The next issue deals with repealing a license and a fee for non-commercial shrimp trawling when the shrimp is used for personal use in the St. Johns River. That is a license that costs $50 and it has not been issued since 1996. The remaining licensing fees deal with the commercial freshwater gear. The first 2 are statewide. One is a statewide freshwater trawl seine license. It costs $50. It has not been issued in over 25 years. The statewide freshwater haul seine license costs $100. There are 5 issued annually, generating $500, which the agency can absorb. What we would like to do, however, is to still issue a haul seine permit so that we can track harvest and effort, but it would be at no cost to the individual. And then the last 3 proposals deal with trawl seine and haul seine gear on Lake Okeechobee specifically. The first one is a resident trawl seine permit. The fee is $50. It hasn't been issued in over 30 years. The second one is a resident haul seine permit fee of $100. There are 6 of those that are issued annually, generating $600 to the agency, which we can absorb. This one also we would like to continue to issue to track harvest and effort, but it would be at no cost to the individual. And then the last one is the non-resident haul or trawl seine permit. It costs $500, but it has never been issued. So staff is recommending that you approve these additional proposals to be submitted to the legislature for our legislative package for the 2014 session. We'd also ask that you authorize the executive director in consultation with the chairman to make adjustments on these issues and any other legislation as needed through the 2014 session.
Thank you very much, Jackie. Fine report. Would like to ask
We have several
speakers.
Thank
you.
The first 3, if you come forward, please. Lyle McCandless, Bonnie Basham, and Drew Martin. So first up would be Lyle.
I'll wait my time on
Okay, thank you. Bonnie?
Very thoughtful, Lyle. Thank you.
Bonnie, you're up next.
Thank you, Bonnie.
Drew Martin.
You're a champ. Thank you.
Okay, the last 2 would be Jerry Sansom and Albert Bryan.
Oh, Jerry, you're from all the way to Tallahassee.
I didn't have to come from Tallahassee today, Mr. Chairman. I just came from Rockledge. I'll be very brief on this. I just wanted to let you all know we do support these recommendations as they relate to commercial permits, but there is one issue that may require a license change, and I just want to give you a heads up on that. Obviously, we're working with Jackie. When we created the Blue Crab plan and created the Blue Crab licenses, we limited the endorsements to only being able to be put on one vessel license. That has created a problem with some folks that they may want to fish different vessels, an offshore boat and an inshore boat, which on all the other fisheries we can put more than one number on, we put the number on more than one boat. In the Blue Crab, we specifically did not allow that. So hopefully we can have a Blue Crab Advisory Committee meeting before too long, and they can take that issue up, and hopefully they'll have a recommendation to you. But I just wanted to give you a heads up that that's an issue that's out there that we may need some resolution on. And I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jerry. Albert Bryan. And that would be our last speaker.
I think we may have had a little mix-up on the cards. Okay.
No problem.
All right, thank you very much.
Get off the hook.
All right, that's the end of our speakers. Let's see. Commissioners, I need a motion to approve staff's recommendation as presented. So moved. Second. Commissioners, is there any discussion on the motion? All in favor? All right. Our next pilot program for regulation of mooring vessels outside of public mooring fields. And we have Major Richard Moore. And if anybody can deal with this efficiently, Major Moore can. Major.
Nothing like being put on the spot, Commissioner Ford, but thank you, sir. Mr. Chairman and Commissioners, I am going to try and make this brief. I know you've been briefed on the issue already. It is sometimes odd, though, when voting issues come before this commission that really our commission focuses primarily on fins, feathers, and fur. And we have people ask us, why are these voting issues coming before this group? And we have to keep reminding people that at least 2/3 of the people who use boats use those boats to be able to fish. Boating and fishing, and probably to a lesser extent hunting, are inextricably linked. And what a great way to get families and kids outdoors and involved in the things that we really support. So I appreciate you recognizing that and taking the voting issues to heart, although they sometimes seem a little more challenging and out of the norm for you. This pilot program, just a real quick background on this, because I know all of you haven't been around for the 5 years that this thing's been in place. Since 2009, the legislature has expected our agency, in consultation with DEP, to establish this pilot program to look at the anchoring and mooring of non-liveaboard boats outside boundaries of public mooring fields. This is an opportunity to satisfy the needs and desires of local governments to deal with real issues in their area, while also trying to figure out a way to protect the freedom of the people who use boats and enjoy the waterways that each of us enjoys as well. We have to report findings and recommendations to the governor, the Senate, and the Speaker of the House by January 1 of next year. So we've just got a little more than a month to finish that up, and we don't want to bring a recommendation or any recommendation forward in that report that you have not had a chance to look at, discuss, and give us the go-ahead to do. The pilot program expires by law on July 1st of 2014 unless the legislature reenacts that. There are some clear statutory goals of the pilot program, primarily to encourage establishment of public mooring fields. And then there were several ideas of how we could test and implement policies that would be able to satisfy a whole bunch of other sub-goals, and we'll probably hit those later, but they're listed in your book. Those are the sub-goals that go with this program. The pilot program, you were involved in the selection of those sites. City of St. Augustine, Martin County, and City of Stewart did it as a group effort. Monroe County was one that they grouped with the City of Key West and the City of Marathon, Sarasota, and the City of St. Pete. And just so you know, your information there shows when each of those ordinance was approved by this body, but you also, it'd be important to realize that each of these not only took approval by you to be able to do, but then the local governments had to go back and work on efforts to be able to implement those. And it's just taken a bit of time to make all that happen. Local governments did a lot of work trying to gather information and document for us what was going on pre-event and post-regulation. And basically what we have found is that the types of boats that are involved in these, each of these areas, this is total counts for these local governments, counting boats that were in their area. And it was very evenly distributed, which was surprisingly between transient cruisers, stationary liveaboards, and long-term storage. That even division has been a little interesting to us. We needed to get some information as we're wrapping this program up to find out what people's perception was about the effectiveness of these programs. So we used proven methodology and did online surveying, which was just mentioned in the deer management program as well. We tried to reach out to the public through a wide series of means. and we had a 20-day period that survey was available. Now, we recognize we could get more scientific information, and we anticipate if we do additional surveys down the road on this topic that we're going to try and tighten that up just a little bit as well. But one thing we did find that was pretty interesting to us is the interest among the voters and the public that we reached out to was pretty significant. We got almost 2,400 survey responses in that 20-day period. So what that indicated to us was this is really a hot topic issue that a lot of people care about. And I'm just going to real quick go over a few quick things that the public survey gave us information on. First, we had questions of whether we were reaching the right people when we did the survey. So we asked some demographic information and found out that 3/4 of those were full-time Florida residents. We had several who were out of state or out of country, and we also had a pretty decent representation of part-time Florida residents. We wanted to see this information to help us verify that we were hitting the right target. When you plot the location, the primary residence zip codes for each of the respondents on a map of the country, what we find is that we got a really good distribution of responses from all across the continent. We also had responses from Canada, and we had a handful of responses also from the state of Alaska. So the things that go on voting wise in the state of Florida affect people all over the country. We found out what kind of residences people have. We weren't sure if we were going to get overwhelmed with people who just lived inland and maybe really didn't have a whole lot of personal interest in this, but we got a large number of responses from people in the areas that had waterfront dwellings. And more interesting to us was that we got a good number of people who said their primary residence in Florida is a boat kept at a marina, a boat kept at anchor, or a boat kept in a mooring field. So we know without a doubt that the respondents that came back to our survey actually are the ones who are affected by these regulations, and that was important to us. We found out also the kind of boats that they use, and again, it's cabin motorboats, cabin sailboats, cabin motorboats, motor sailboats, and houseboats. Those are the primary boats that are going to be affected by the pilot program. So again, we felt very comfortable that we were getting a good representation of the people that we needed to be talking to in the survey. We asked the respondents, what do you believe, which of these sub-goals that I mentioned earlier have actually been accomplished or have been affected by the work in each of these areas? And what we found out was that they broke them out by each of the individual ones, and the two primary ones that showed up were the promoting the use of mooring fields and the deterring abandoned and derelict boats, although there was response for each of the other one of the sub-goals. It was interesting to us that about 1/5 of the total indicated that there were no effects to any of the sub-goals, and we don't really understand why that is, but that's what some of them responded. This slide, I apologize for its busyness and real difficulty in trying to understand. I hope that you've got it in your book and you're able to look at it in a little greater depth, but basically, the way it was explained to me is green is good. This is all about the individuals, of their perception of each of the individual ordinances and how effective they were in totality. And in each of the different areas, we broke Key West and Marathon apart because those two are so different. And we aren't really sure why they're so different. We got some ideas, but we're not sure. City of St. Augustine, which started out highly controversial, and if you would have asked this question very early in the pilot program, you would have probably seen much more negative responses. And 2 years or so into it, highly favorable to neutral responses in that area. What this slide indicates to us is that there's more information that we need to be able to dig out of this and try to understand what's working and what's not working. So I'll use that to kind of lead up to where we go from here. We are going to have to provide recommendations, and we have to do that by January 1st. I've already mentioned that. We are going to ask you to support us in a recommendation in that report that would ask for the extension of the anchoring and mooring pilot program for 3 additional years. Now, we recognize that there's a lot of additional information that we should be able to gain during that time period. We also recognize that none of us who have been involved in this process ever imagined that it would take as long as it did to get the local ordinances completed at the local level and passed here. It's been a real challenge to do, and that's not a problem with this commission, but it's a real issue trying to get that done. That means that we have some of the ordinances that have only actually been in effect for 3 to 6 months. And that's not really an adequate amount of time to be able to evaluate how they work. So we believe a 3-year extension will allow us to do a more thorough and complete assessment of what works and what doesn't work. And we'll also be able to gauge public sentiment changes as the bugs are worked out in this. Again, keep in mind that if the program is not extended, the ordinance of each program area expire on July 1st. And that would mean that the effect would be that no local governments anywhere in the state have the ability to regulate anchoring anywhere in their jurisdiction outside public mooring fields for what the state law defines as liveaboard boats. So to wrap it up, our recommendation is to extend this for an additional 3 years with some caveats. We recognize that adding additional areas to this for the next 3 years would be problematic. The time it takes to get ordinances passed and through and approved. Also, we don't want to lose any of the areas that are currently involved. So keeping the current 5, it would be our ideal goal. We believe we need to do additional surveying. We say on this slide that we want to do it again in late 2015. It's been brought to our attention by our stakeholders that doing additional surveying that might help us understand seasonality changes would be beneficial. So we would likely do surveys more frequently than just waiting until 2 years from now to do that. We also recommend that we become clear in the document that we are going to work with the League of Cities, Association of Counties, Inland Navigation Districts, other associations and organizations that represent voting interests in order to come back and look at potential legislative actions, because that was something the legislature was interested in. And I would like to also, on record, include marine industry type organizations so that we include those critical partners and stakeholders in that discussion. And finally, that we would come back and report our findings and recommendations again to the governor, the House, and the Senate, and do that on January 1st of 2017. So, Mr. Chairman, that concludes my report, unless you have any questions.
Major, we'd like to thank you for not only the good work, but the patience, and especially in looking at all the voters of this state and using the new technology. Very impressive. Most helpful. Commissioner Pritchard.
Okay, we have a couple of speakers. Our first 3 are Bonnie Basham, Jeff Crosskoff, and Drew Martin.
I'll be very brief. Hi. I am Bonnie Basham. I do represent Vote US. We are very proud to have been 16% plus of all the respondents in that survey. We put it out on our website. We got excellent response. And as you guys know, we've been there since the first day. We support the extension. I've been asked by the National Marine Manufacturers Association and the Marine Industries Association of Florida to also lend their support to the extension. They drew straws and they sent me. So I look forward to working with you guys for the next 3 years, and we will bring this in and it will be a good project.
Thank you, Bonnie. Always important to hear from you. Appreciate it.
Our next speaker is Jeff Crosskoff, who is the former mayor of the city of Stuart and currently is the city commissioner in Stuart.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Chairman.
we welcome you.
I'd like to introduce Terry O'Neill, our development director, who came with me today.
Terry, thank you for coming.
Former commissioner and mayor Mike Mortel, who is now our city attorney. We trained Michael Durham through the voting ordinance and graduated him to the county attorney's position. So now Michael's agreed to join us as our representative.
Thank you for coming today.
It's really a joy to see and support the recommendation. I can't tell you the hard work staff has put into this. And I think we were the last one in. We appreciate all the efforts. I can tell you, education is not like a light switch. Just don't turn it on and off in an instant. When you turn it on, it takes a while for it to filter through. And I know that filtering through is beginning to happen in our area because my phone calls on this topic have dropped to 0. So people know, they're aware this is going on, and they're working with everybody to see it, the best product come out in the end. So we support it, and whatever we can do with our legislative delegation, Senator Negron, Representatives Magar and Harrell, will be happy to advocate your final recommendation with them to work with your staff.
Thank you for coming today.
Thank you.
Appreciate your comments.
Next is Drew Martin, and then our final 2 speakers will be Jerry Sansom and Albert Bryan.
Drew Martin with the Sierra Club and Lauren McDonald, the defenders, would like to share a little of my time, which is okay with me if that's okay with the commission.
That's fine.
Okay. I just want to support this. I think it's very important for environmental reasons. This is an opportunity to make sure that boats are properly handled, that we don't have derelict boats that are polluting. If boats are in bad condition, they often are leaving a lot of oil in the water. The other thing is it's very important from sanitation that boaters, if they're living on there, are using pump out stations so that we're not getting a lot of pollution in the water that is harming the species in that area. Thank you.
Drew let me use part of his time, and I'm speaking just personally because I live on that little bay in St. Petersburg, and getting rid of the derelict boats and making sure that sanitation is, or that they are sanitary and it's clean, is very important to me. So thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next was Jerry Sansom.
Albert Bryan, I would encourage you to take more time and look at it. Obviously, we don't want anybody dumping their waste overboard. We have property down in the Keys, and it's a natural environment, with the reefs and stuff like that. And the last thing you want to see is somebody throwing their waste overboard. So I think it's sometimes maybe more of a law enforcement issue than it is trying to come up with more restrictive ideas. You know what I mean? Because it gets where we just keep piling on, no, you can't do this, no, you can't do that. And sometimes it's only a few people that are really the problem. And maybe we can address the issue of what kind of anchor you use. If you're in a sensitive area, you can only use a certain type of anchor.
Thank you. Appreciate your comment. Next speaker.
Jerry. And he's our last speaker.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Jerry Sansom, I'm wearing a different hat for this one. I'm the Brevard Commissioner of the Florida Inland Navigation District. Nick, did y'all get a letter from the district indicating support for y'all requesting extension of the pilot study?
It sounds like yes.
Okay.
You're asking a guy who, yeah.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure, since we just did that at the end of last week, that you did get that. But we,
Yes, sir.
formally for the record, we are supporting the commission's request to extend the pilot study for an additional 3 years. We think that will give you more greens on your survey when these other areas that have just implemented their programs get a chance to get it in place, because as we saw in St. Augustine, they changed as people understood them and got used to them. And frankly, we're hoping we can come up in the end with a comprehensive plan that can, model ordinance, if you will, that we can then, the legislature can authorize the local communities to do. And those of us that work in both Key West and Marathon, you don't have to explain the difference to us. We understand why things are different in Marathon and Key West. Thank you.
Thank you, Jerry. Commissioner Critters, are we finished?
That was all the speakers.
Thank you very much. Commissioners, I need a motion to approve staff's recommendation as presented. Move. Second. All in favor? Aye.
Could I ask a question? It's not that I'm not in favor. Major, if I could ask you a couple of questions.
It's late in the day, so please make them easy.
All right, Richard.
Yes, ma'am.
If you can clarify for me exactly what you're recommending as far as sending just what we have for 3 years but then going to the legislature, it says to identify potential legislative actions which would assist the government entities in solving problems. So are you saying that at the end of 3 years, you don't think that we would be asking to extend the program, that we would be asking for something completely different that would just be legislative?
Yes, ma'am.
Because I was thinking that part of the appeal of this program was it could be individualized based on the area's preferences.
Right. One of the things, and I skimmed over, and I apologize for doing that, but one of the things that we did recently was we held a public meeting, and we had 10 highly engaged stakeholders in this issue come and meet with us in Tallahassee. And one of the things that came out of that meeting and was suggested to us is the possibility of working toward a model ordinance, so to speak. Something that might be the bare bones minimum that if a local government needed to regulate anchoring within their area, here are certain parameters that they may be able to go ahead and adopt without necessarily having to get any kind of approval to do so. But then there may be other things that if they want to do, those would have to have some additional level of scrutiny and review. And very similar to the way that we're currently doing waterway marker ordinances. There are certain things that by law local governments can do if they want to regulate vessel speeds in their jurisdiction. And if they do under these parameters, they can do those without any kind of authority besides what's in statute. Whereas if they want to stretch it beyond that, the law requires substantial competent evidence, and it has to come back and get reviewed by us and potentially even by you for them to be able to do some of those things. So that was suggested as a potential model to be able to apply to the anchoring and mooring program, but it would take time. During that 3-year period, we anticipate meeting with these groups and starting to see if there are those things, the common denominators that can be pulled out that might fit into some kind of a local model ordinance that would work. We don't really know how that'll shake out, but our stakeholders suggested that might be an option to us. So that's what we're trying to talk about here is that we're going to work toward that type of thing and assemble that group and kind of help shepherd that along and see what comes out of it.
Thank you. Very well said. Commissioners, all in favor of the motion for first, seconded? All in favor? Thank you. Commissioners, with your overall concurrence, we would like to take several small items to tomorrow on the agenda. That's all right. Thank you. Eric?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. We still have a number of speakers for the open to the public comments. The items we can bring forth to you now are the rules relative to swordfish and the venting tool requirements, items B2, B3 respectively from tomorrow's agenda. This would help you manage your time tomorrow. We'd be able to present it. However, action would need to take place tomorrow, similar to what we did on the budget and legislative issues at the last meeting.
Well done. Martha, thank you. We will begin with a fish that has a long nose, the swordfish.
That's right. Good afternoon, Commissioners. This is tab M in your books, and this is a draft rule amendment for our swordfish rule 68B-58. Let me get mine over here. Okay, so swordfish in the Atlantic and the Gulf are managed at an international level by the International Commission for the Conservation of Atlantic Tunas. This is also known as ICAT. The United States is allotted a swordfish quota by ICAT, and NOAA Fisheries Highly Migratory Species Division, which is often referred to as HMS, is responsible for managing the U.S.'s quota and swordfish harvest in federal waters. Swordfish management is a success story, and the stock is overfished but has been fully rebuilt over the last couple of years. The U.S. has not reached its quota in recent years, which can be problematic because unused quota could be transferred to a less conservation-oriented country. So in response, HMS recently implemented new federal rules that provide additional commercial swordfish opportunities. And the proposed rules I'm going to talk about today would allow Florida fishermen fishing under these new federal regulations to land and sell their catch and make state rules in Florida and make state rules more consistent with federal rules. So just a quick background on Florida swordfish fishery. This fishery largely occurs in federal waters.
In Florida, the swordfish fishery is mainly centered off of southeast Florida. And this region is really unique because the deep water where swordfish are typically found is so close to the coast, it's closer than anywhere else. And as a result of this, there's easy access to swordfish fishing grounds in the region. And southeast Florida is home to a very active recreational and a limited access commercial fishery.
Thank you, Margaret. We're now, by the way, on page 4 for our commissioners.
Yes.
Continue.
So the new federal
commercial rules.
Yep, the new rules include creation of a new open access commercial permit for swordfish. This is called the Swordfish General Commercial Permit. And for halyard vessels that possess a federal HMS charter headboat permit will be allowed to commercially harvest and sell swordfish when they're not on a for-hire trip. The new federal rules also set allowable years and special regional vessel limits that can change in season for vessels fishing in the new open access commercial fishery. Okay, so this slide summarizes the changes to state's rules for consideration today. I'm just going to breeze through these because we're going to talk about them in more detail on the following slides. But we're first recommending designating swordfish as a restricted species. Some of the proposed rule changes today would allow fishermen operating in the new federal open access commercial fishery to land and sell their swordfish in Florida. And this is an important change because current state rules require a saltwater products license and a federal limited access permit for commercial harvest and sale. Other changes that are consistent with existing federal rules would be closing state waters to commercial harvest when adjacent federal waters closed, and updating size limits. And staff is also recommending establishing allowable years for swordfish harvest from state waters while allowing transit of swordfish legally harvested by other years from federal waters. And lastly, we'll update some references to federal rules in our state rules. So here's the details for what would apply to the commercial fishery. So first, swordfish would be designated as a restricted species. And this means that a valid restricted species endorsement, or RS, would be required for commercial harvest or sale. The RS requirement ensures that the commercial swordfish fishery remains professional, even with this open access permit. Professional commercial vessels are equipped to ensure that not only the safety of the crew is protected, but also ensure product quality for consumer safety. At the same time, some new opportunities for swordfish harvest off Florida would be allowed by commercial fishermen that fish for other species and by for-hire operators, because in most of these cases, both can use their income from fishing to qualify for an RS endorsement. The proposed draft rule would also provide an exception from recreational and bag and vessel limits for persons commercially harvesting swordfish pursuant to the new Swordfish General Commercial Permit or an HMS Charter Headboat Permit when not on a for-hire trip. Federal rules would require these harvesters to follow federal vessel limits when they're fishing in state waters. And state rules would also be modified to allow persons commercially harvesting swordfish under these permits to sell their harvest. So if federal waters are closed to commercial swordfish harvest, adjacent state waters would also be closed to commercial harvest until federal waters reopen. And wholesale dealers that are involved in the initial sale of swordfish would be required to possess a valid federal Atlantic swordfish dealer permit to purchase swordfish. The proposed changes on this slide would apply to both recreational and commercial harvesters. First, the minimum plankton to keel length measurement for swordfish would be lowered from 29 to 25 inches, and this would be consistent with existing federal rules. The rule amendments would also establish that swordfish may only be harvested by hook and line in state waters, but would provide an allowance for swordfish legally harvested in federal waters using other gears that can be transited through state waters if fishing gear is soaked. And finally, those citations to federal rules will be updated so our constituents know which version of our federal rules are being referenced. That was really fast, but staff recommends approving the proposed draft rules for swordfish as described on the previous slides and summarized here. And if approved, staff recommends noticing and filing the rule without further hearing unless requested, as allowed by section 120.53 Florida statutes, and making the rules effective as soon as possible. And staff has evaluated the rule under the standards for 68.1.00 for Florida's Administrative Code and found them to be in compliance. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Martha, thank you very much. Mr. Vice Chairman.
We have two speakers. We have Drew Martin and Jerry Sampson.
Mark, with the Sierra Club, I have to say I was taken off guard. I didn't realize you were going to cover this today, but I'm not a fisheries expert, so I just tell you that right up front. But it sounds to me like this makes sense from the way it was proposed. I think the most important thing to me is that you minimize bycatch and that we're not throwing away a fish that somebody brings on board. So I think that's really important. We very much are concerned about overfishing. Now, we just want to make sure that this isn't going to open up to too much fishing, but it sounds like this matches the federal regulations. So from what I can see, it makes a lot of sense the way this is being presented. Again, our main concern is that the minimization of bycatch and that we're not losing species by having them thrown over because the fishermen can't keep them. Thank you.
Thank you, Jerry. Gary?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. Jerry Sansom, Organized Fish from the Florida, and I appreciate y'all taking this up today, so I don't have to cover it under other, since I won't be able to be here tomorrow. We very strongly support the staff's recommendation, and I think it's very important. Your tab M, which is called a cheat sheet on swordfish, is very good and it's very detailed, and I hope y'all have read it and comprehend it, because almost 20 years ago, about 15 years ago, we underwent some very, very strong reductions in swordfish in order to get a handle on the rebuilding of this stock. The swordfish stock in the Western Atlantic now is rebuilt. It has recovered. And that's why I think it's important. The feds have recognized that they can allow some fishing back where they didn't before. This is critically important. And even the price of swordfish reflects the fact that the stock has recovered. Now, having said that, it is also very important for y'all to understand that we do not need to reintroduce recreationally caught swordfish into the market. The restricted species endorsement is a very critical part of this recommendation. You will hear probably some people tomorrow. You've certainly gotten some letters from people that have asked you to not do this, to not do swordfish as restricted species, and they give you a variety of reasons. I will tell you that the restricted species endorsement will not keep a single charter or for-hire captain that makes at least $5,000 a year from his for-hire or charter activities from qualifying for restricted species. When we wrote the restricted species legislation, we plugged them in, recognizing that a lot of charter folks commercial fish in other times, and we actually allowed them to use 100% of their charter activities income to qualify for the restricted species endorsement. So that will not impact any charter fisherman that makes at least $5,000 a year for charter fishing. What it will do is it will keep him from being able to sell recreationally harvested swordfish on his boat in the marketplace. We do not, the value of the average swordfish is over $400 on the marketplace, and we do not need to be encouraging recreational fishermen to go after these fish for the meat or for the money. If they're recreational fishing for swordfish, frankly, catching that large a fish on a rod and reel should be a valuable enough experience for them to do for while they went out. The swordfish are a large fish. They are fairly difficult if you don't have the proper equipment and facilities on your vessel to chill down, to properly refrigerate, to bring to the market. If you do not make this a restricted species, then we will be looking at an increased probability of these fish being sold backdoor, unlicensed facilities, improperly licensed restaurants. And not only that, it would then allow that income by that person to help them qualify for restricted species on their own. And so it's sort of a very large trapdoor at breaking down, if you will, the division between recreational fishermen who live under bag limits and go fishing for their own pleasure, and those folks that are trying to maintain a professional industry, put quality seafood on the market, and be able to make a living. We've had restricted species provision in place for almost 20 years now. I could tell you a story about why we had to do that, but we don't have time today. But please adopt the staff's recommendations in toto. It's very important. If you don't, you're opening up for a lot of things to fall out. And this is an awfully large fish, and it should be fun enough to catch one that you don't have to then turn around and sell it to make your recreational experience whole. And I appreciate that, Mr. Chairman. I apologize for not being able to be here tomorrow, but I got an unavoidable conflict, so having to give you all I got today.
Sierra Club and the commercial fishermen, is this a new alliance?
Well, as you may have heard me say in the past, when Ted and I agree that sometimes he's educable.
Well said. Jerry, isn't it marvelous that our vice chairman this time of the day has such positive energy?
That's because he left for about an hour or two.
I'm just glad you guys are taking this time between now and dinner. I always hate to be one of the last guys between you and your food, but I do appreciate you taking this up today. Thank you.
Okay, Jerry, is what we might do. Martha, would you mind coming up for a moment? Jerry, we're going to have Martha address your concerns. Thank you.
I think Jerry summarized the issue pretty well in terms of why we're requesting this draft rule go into place as is.
If I may, I just wanted Martha to make sure we were in sync with Jerry and we were in a good place. And
Yeah.
He said a lot of stuff there, and I just want to make sure we did. Okay.
I think we're on the same page.
You guys are right on track. Stay with it.
All right. Thank you. Commissioners, I need a motion to approve staff's recommendation as presented.
Mr. Chairman.
We do. We need to wait till tomorrow? Good.
Yes, Mr. Chairman,
No,
the
that's
action will
good
be
point.
till tomorrow unless.
All right, let's bring Martha back up for our next issue. The fleet of foot. Thank you, Martha.
My pleasure.
Just
So we're
like a
going to run
quick
through
airboat.
venting tools very quickly. Okay. So this one is a summary of a proposed rule to adopt federal standards for refish gear regulations in the Gulf. The proposed action would eliminate the requirement to possess and use venting tools when fishing for refish in Gulf state waters. Okay. So current state regulations for Gulf of Mexico refish gear include the use of non-stainless steel, non-offset circle hooks, dehooking devices, and venting tools for both recreational and commercial fisheries. Today, the Commission will consider removing the requirement to possess and use venting tools in state waters of the Gulf, and the requirement to use non-stainless steel and non-offset circle hooks and dehooking devices in state waters of the Gulf would remain in place. These tools minimize handling times for refish, which aids in survival of the fish upon release. The requirement to possess and use venting tools when fishing for refish in federal waters of the Gulf was eliminated effective September 3rd. And the Gulf Council decided to remove this requirement for a couple of reasons. First, fish do not always need to be vented, and in such cases, venting can actually cause unnecessary harm to the fish. Venting requires additional handling time, which can result in physical injury or physiological stress for the fish and decrease the chances that the fish will survive after release. And if used improperly, venting tools can pierce the fish's vital organs and cause internal bleeding. The Council also considered that there are now other tools and methods available, such as besetting devices, that can be used to increase survival of fish that are affected by barotrauma. In essence, removal of the venting tool requirement allows fishermen that catch refish in the federal waters of the Gulf the freedom to determine how to best release refish using tools and methods they feel are appropriate for the situation. The proposed rule would modify Chapter 68B-14.005 to eliminate the requirement to possess and use venting tools when fishing for refish in state waters of the Gulf of Mexico. This requirement currently applies to both recreational and commercial harvesters. Is Louie in here? Yeah. Okay, good.
Louis, that fish is nothing to be proud of.
Removing this requirement would be beneficial to anglers and commercial fishermen because it gives them discretion to use the tools or methods of their choosing to increase survival of released free fish in the Gulf. If this proposed rule amendment is approved, the decision will be final and the rule will be filed without further hearing. Okay. And staff recommends adopting consistent state regulations for Gulf free fish gear regulations using the process of adopting federal standards under Chapter 120.546 Florida statutes. And our outreach education staff will continue to demonstrate to the public the benefits of venting and desetting devices when used properly. And if the commission approves the proposed rule amendment, it will be advertised and then filed without further public hearing and become effective as soon as possible. Staff has evaluated the rules under the standards of 681.004 FAC and found them to be in compliance. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much, Martha, for both reports. Very well done. Mr. Vice Chairman?
We have no public testimony on this one.
Public comment on general public comment?
We do. Is there anything else we need to do on this issue?
No, all this will be done tomorrow.
Excellent. Okay, well, we have a number of speakers. This is the end of the day public comments. And we got first speaker Lyle McCandless, then Brad Wilnecker, and Mike Collins. So come on up, Lyle. This is your moment.
For the record again, my name is Lyle McCandless. I'm speaking here today as an individual, president of the Big Cypress Sportsmen's Alliance, and as a member of the FWT DemTag group. I did a review recently of my personal goals for the next 20 years of my life. In addition to attending these good FWT meetings, I'm going to be working, as I have for the past several years, in establishing a fair shake for the sportsmen using the Big Cypress. And I will tell you without going into detail, we feel we have established a strategy to greatly enhance our situation on the Big Cypress over the next few years. I say that with a lot of confidence. We're going to really accelerate our efforts to get youth out of the television room, away from their computer, away from their iPhones, and get them in the woods. We've got an event coming up that I described earlier. Our new tagline for our Big Cypress Sportsmen's Alliance is "For the Kids." That's going to be on all of our websites and all of our signage and everything in the future. I want to make a couple of comments here regarding the upcoming new hunting situation in the Zone A in the South. As I mentioned earlier, I'm a member of the DemTag committee. We have worked on establishing some goals for the South Zone. As part of that process, when we had the tag meetings in Clewiston, what we started with was basically the comments that were generated by the public comments on the East and the West Coast. That was our charge, to take those recommendations along with our personal input at that tag meeting and put that into some written suggestions. So we ended up with, I won't go over all of them now, but we ended up at the end of that meeting and a couple of meetings and the phone conversation about half a dozen major goals. But be aware, as some feedback from the public meetings and conversations we had, and in particular, Wayne Zahn and I, like brothers, we're like-minded in that we are very much for making our best effort to get the tagging reporting issue back before you commissioners. I will have to tell you candidly that I feel strongly that the failure of that effort to pass muster with the commissioners in the past was not for the best benefit of deer hunting in the state of Florida. Point blank. So we're going to make efforts, and we have that identified in the South Zone as one of our goals. Obviously, not just in the South, but for the state. And my final comment is, I kind of chuckled a while ago when the subject came up about the complexity of all the items the Fish and Wildlife Commission has to face. I remember after Ronnie's, about his second commission meeting, he and I had a phone conversation, and he said, Lyle, he says, I run 20 corporations. He says, I've never been intimidated in my life. He says, I've got to tell you, he said, this FWC position, commissioner is like running a small country. He said, it's almost intimidating. He says, I never imagined it. So with that in mind, Ronnie, I commend you for hanging in there and doing the exemplary job you're doing. And I'm looking forward to working with you, particularly on this Everglades restoration issue as things go down the road. And they didn't have to use all those extra minutes.
Awesome.
Thank you,
Thanks
folks.
a lot. Appreciate it. Okay, next up, Brad Wilnecker.
Yeah, thank you, Lyle, for everything you do for all the sportsmen.
Brad's gone. How about Mike Collins? I think he's gone. So Mike. Drew Martin. After Drew, we got Jerry again. Isn't a line.
Drew Martin, again, on behalf of the Sierra Club, I just wanted to thank the FWC for their position on the gill nets. We think that gill netting should be prohibited. We think it's been very damaging to fish stock, and we appreciate the position that the Fish and Wildlife Commission has taken, and we support that position. Also, on the Everglades, we support your position. I didn't get a chance to comment earlier, but we support your position on moving water under the Tamiami Trail Bridge. We think that's extremely important, and we hope that that will happen soon if more and get more water flowing south. Thank you.
Thank you, Drew. Jerry?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Again, Jerry Sampson, Executive Director, Organized Fishing of Florida. Since I won't be here tomorrow, I'll give you my comments on the Biscayne National Park proposal. We support staff's recommendations. It's very important that you all go out and hold your own public hearings on those proposals and find out what people think. I would strongly urge that you not give the Park Service, give up any authority that you have over managing fisheries. I was part of the legislation that extended the boundaries of the Biscayne Bay National Park, and because of, and I know some of y'all have had the same experience that we have, is the Park Service will lie to you. Just straight up lie to you. And so, you know, as y'all know, I'm a pretty trusting guy. But when you lie to me 2 or 3 times, you know, it just kind of goes at that point. So we put in that legislation when we expanded Biscayne National Park that the state retain the fishing rights. And exercise that, please. Do not give them 1 ounce of authority that they don't already have, because they made a lot of promises to a lot of people about what was going to be able to continue when they established that. And just as soon as those people that made the promises die or leave office, it doesn't hold any water at all. So, and I've also experienced their methodology of having public hearings and diluting the impact of any single voice or any single comment to where it really doesn't stand out anymore if it doesn't kind of fit the flow. So I would urge y'all and support the staff recommendations for y'all go forward with public hearings, find out from the people what these proposals are going to do to them, what the impact is going to be, and make your own decisions on what you think is best for the management in that area. And if it suits the Park Service, fine. If it doesn't suit them, then stick to your guns. Thank you very much.
Jerry, did somebody tell you if you like your fishing in Biscayne National Park, you can keep your fishing in Biscayne National Park? Got it. Thanks. John Rozier, then Victor Mallow, then Albert Bryan.
Hey, it's John Rozier, Full Track Conservation Club. As we talked about extensively a few hours ago, the last 2 years the Everglades have been closed because of high water. In that time, many of my members have
what can we do? Can we go out and help the deer? Can we feed them? Can we go and do this? Can we go to the islands and plant trees and stuff like that? In the past, the Day Club and the Bower Club went out on the weekends, planted trees, pulled invasive species off islands, along with the FWC supervising us. The last couple of years, I've sent memos, I've asked staff down here, hey, you guys got something you need us to do? We just want to put it out there. We're more than willing to help. Of course, the one caveat is most of my people work during the week, so anytime we've ever done any of these projects, it's always been on the weekend. I don't know if that's been a stumbling block or whatever, but we would like to do something in anticipation of perhaps another wet year next year. Can we go to an island and plant some kind of trees or stuff like that? I personally have worked out there with contractors, planting trees, cleaning tree islands and stuff like that, and yeah, I get paid pretty good for doing it. So the amount of money that the FWC would save by having 10 or 12 guys with buggies going out there transporting 2,000 or 3,000 trees, to do that, you could save that money and put it towards something else. So I just wanted to put that out, and maybe there's a program we could start or get a little more. Please come ask us. We're more than willing to help.
Good idea, John. Thank you.
We want to thank all your members, too, for all your support. And thank you for supporting the Blue-Green event the other night.
If I could ask Thomas or Kip or one of you guys in HSC to talk to these guys or hook them up with Michael Anderson and maybe see if there's a way to re-energize that program, that partnership, that'd be great. Victor?
Thank you again. Wanted to touch on two topics here. The first one being the hunting seasons when available, Holy Land, Rotenberger, Everglades, and Francis Taylor. Again, they're open for 15 days out of the year for a general gun season, and I know that I'm sure we could do something about that. And I would ask Commissioner Bergeron to please look into this and see if we can get us hunters that we don't get a chance to go out, big whitetail hunting up north. We don't get a chance to hunt on some of the more expensive outfitting hunts. We want to hunt in public land. We want to hunt our own land here and take a deer and bring it home and feed our families with it. I've done it. I know that one deer will feed my family a couple nights a week with meat. Lasts me about 3 months. So, I'd like to see that. I'd like to see a little more hunting time out there for General Gun. Fish Eating Creek, same thing. You got, from the 4th to the 6th of October this year and October 18th through the 20th. Those are like 2 weekends out of the year. We need more time. We need more time out there hunting. If we could, hunters would greatly appreciate that. Maybe opening up as well on conditional reptiles in Rocky Glades. From what I understand, we have March 3rd through October 11th where we can't hunt in that area, and there's no reason not to. Really, I mean, if we can just get back into the local areas that we have down here in South Florida and revamp all these hunting dates, and that might help us out a lot, And I think that's something that can be done very simply and not take up, too many people's time. The other issue I want to talk about, I know I only got a minute, is that I've got the reports from the South Florida Water Management water levels, and I can tell you I've reviewed them and I've showed them to a few folks around here. We're looking at somewhere, but from what I see here, there hasn't been that much of a difference in water levels. Water levels are pretty consistent with being the way they are, whether it's up and down 8 inches or not. If take a good look at them and look at the history. I've got the history reports here, and yeah, I can see that, you might have under a foot difference of water levels in different areas, but it's no different than, years ago. It's just the way the area is. And, you know, I respect that the deer may be under stress, but I think that the deer live under stress. I think that's the way they live out there. And I'd like to, you know, for someone in the commission to, you know, take a good look at it and look at the history and see that it's all the same. There's nothing new about having water levels go up and down in that area. And once again, I want to thank you for your time, and please, let's look into these hunting seasons and try to get us a little more hunting time out there.
Well, let me try to explain to you. To have more hunting opportunities, you have to manage the water levels that are compatible with the environment.
Okay.
Back in the 60s and the 70s, the quota in the conservation areas was up to 5,000. Today, I think it may be 100, the quota. Now, and that's because the wildlife was drowned, you know, back in the 60s. The 1982 Mercy kill, the 1994, when 98% of every fur-bearing animal out there drowned. So there's been more wildlife killed by high water than by a hunter. So if we can get our water levels correct, that's compatible with the environment, we will have all kind of opportunities.
And that should also give us better herds. I mean, we should have a stronger herd.
And you can have longer seasons possibly, plus a greater quota. And it all deals with managing that 700,000 acres with the proper water levels that are compatible with the environment. There's been an awful lot of impact to our fur-bearing animals over 3 or 4 decades.
Well, I'm glad to know that you're on our side and you see what's going on, and that you know, maybe we can somehow, some way or another, get these hunting seasons opened up a little longer.
Well, if you were here earlier, that's what we're trying to do through Central Everglades 7. That's on the table now with our position paper.
Thank you.
And to manage that water level to where we have more wildlife, where you have more opportunities.
That would be phenomenal, and we would appreciate that.
Well, we're working towards that.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you
very much, Commissioner.
Thank you. Up next, Albert Bryan, and then Byron will be after Albert. No Albert. Byron, you're up.
I don't want to beat this thing to death about the water in the Everglades, but I feel it important if we spend another 3 minutes on it, if you will. I think I heard, and tell me if I'm incorrect, and if I am, let me say it, that we've tried for years from the bottom up with the Corps, because everyone's dictating the water level. They tell South Florida Water Management their 250-mile-an-hour windproof blockhouse up in the complex in West Palm Beach that they operate over 100 water structures electronically, remotely from that building. They tell them how high to jump and when to jump. And we need to start from the top down. And Washington is the top down as far as I'm concerned. I don't care if it's the senators and representatives putting the pressure on the Secretary of Interior, or we start with the Secretary of Interior, which I know Ronnie Bergeron has had out at his place. But we need to make the point, and I think Commissioner Bergeron made that point, but I'm going to say it again. By the time they get around fooling around, as long as they've been fooling around with this Everglades restoration program, there won't be an Everglades ecology left to protect. You'll have to start all over again. We'll be out there planting Bermuda grass or something, trying to raise sod. So I just urge y'all to do a strong position statement. Make it. I think that somebody suggested, and I think that hopefully that's going to be in the statement, the position statement, that we do work with the federal government and either get the funds released. It aggravates me that South Florida Water Management put so much money in this, and the feds haven't. And that wasn't the deal. It was 50-50 to start with. So we need to take them to task, pull them up short with the bit in their mouth, and demand that we have what we know is right for us to have. Thank you.
And Byron, just so you know, for the record, I mean, Governor Scott, he's been on top of this. I mean, he's
Yes.
written to the Corps, he's written to the president, and
Yes.
so we've got folks at the top pushing in all the right
But we
places.
need to push from other directions too, from this commission, from individuals, and I know everybody's on the same page. We just need to have it done. Because people can't understand until they've seen it and seen the devastation. Commissioner Bergeron mentioned the mercy kills, and I know one time one of the animal advocacy groups went to court, and we didn't get to move the deer. I'm sorry, we didn't get to hunt the deer on one side of Alligator Alley on 75. They hired airboaters to go in there and capture the deer and take it to high land. And they did it in 6 months. Virtually all the deer they moved to high land had died because of the stress. There's a lot of people talk about things they just don't understand. And I've made camps in the glades. I've airboated it, swat buggied it practically all the way through. Had camps down in there for many years, and I don't know all there is to know. I don't know as much as Rodney Bergeron knows, but I do know some of it, and the water is just a killer. Sudden death, I think, was the state.
Well, I want you to go to Washington DC with me, Byron, okay? If we
Okay.
have to go there. But I think we had a very good meeting earlier about the Central Everglades and SEP and about an extreme high water emergency policy that we have to have.
Absolutely.
So we can keep the Everglades alive until we complete the largest restoration in the history of the world. And we're going to be working very hard on that. And
Well, I think the point that you made for short-term duration, if we don't have it down to 10 parts per billion in phosphorus, what's the long-term effect on it? It's nil.
Right.
When you spread it out and it's only for short-term and emergency release, we don't have to have it down to 10 parts per billion.
You're absolutely right.
Thanks, Byron.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Up next, Frank Denninger, and then Manley Fuller.
Jetport Conservation and Recreation Club and ECC, but speaking on my own behalf. Byron made me aware of I might have misspoke earlier. He said that I said to you all, I support the 5-point rule, but if I did, I really meant 5-inch spike rule, the current management of a lot of land in this state. And something else I got to correct. Well, I was used a little analogy talking about poachers, 160 of them. I don't know if everybody got what I was talking about. We got 160 Panthers that kind of challenge here every day of the week, best they can. And they're pretty good, I think. And the one other thing, I may run out of time here, possibly a little slack if I could get it. There's some commissioners here that probably haven't ever experienced what a die-off is like from what SEEP is promising in our future. Not in my future, but in the wildlife future, not just deer, all of them. GFC passed an executive order one year, many years ago, maybe on the major die-off Ronnie was talking about. Said nobody can go out in Area 3 right now because the water's too high. Well, I'm a little bit of an anarchist at times. So I loaded up my 12-foot feed-bow boat and poled it 3 miles with a motor, outboard and a trolling motor on it that I found out wouldn't work on Ronnie's airboat trail to El Rancho. And I pulled it down there. It took about 4 or 5 hours at night. I knew the area because I airboated it. Went into the camp with a little hand lantern, little one and 4 batteries on it, with a camera. And I talked to the Miami Herald reporter, and she said, "Could you get me some pictures?" I said, "You bet I will." So I go to the camp. And I figured I can do this. This is no sweat. I'm going to blow the whistle on these people. Kind of felt like Greenpeace, you know? And I got down there, and before I got on this major island, I smelled it. I said, ooh, I never ran into that before. And then when I got up to walk on a catwalk up around the gazebo where I spent the night, on the truncated rubber tree roots on that island was where quite a few does and fawns were bedded. Now remember, every deer I mentioned about in this little story was shivering and shaking because it was on the edge of dying. And on the catwalk right in front of the building that I walked within 15 feet of was a doe and 2 fawns laying there, shaking, shivering, not looking too healthy. And then when I saw this, I mean, I didn't even try to put the light on them. The side light lit them up to where I saw what I saw. I knew I was in something I wasn't quite prepared for as a regular human. And I spent that night there listening to these animals gag and spit and fight and roll around in the mud all night long. Man, you just got to imagine laying there at night in a beautiful gazebo and listening to this stuff go on, okay? And then in the morning came the real, like a dropping of the hammer on me. The gray light comes up at sunrise, and I start peeking around, walking as quiet as I can, not wanting to spook nothing, kind of peeking up over the screen to look. And I ain't believing what I'm seeing. 2 out of 3 of the deer on the catwalk were already dead. A couple of them on the rubber tree roots were dead. And what was amazing was that all the bucks, 5 or 6 of them, bedded down in the water a foot deep. I guess nature told them to give the does and the fawns the better place to die, And then what? The reason I don't even travel Alligator Alley anymore is the final thing that hit me that I saw was I smelled an extra strong whiff of death come on a little gentle breeze, that was like double the rest of what I was smelling all night. And I look around about 30 yards away, and I don't know if you've ever seen a living doe walking with the hide falling off of their right rear hand. And that animal dying like that. And at the time, it wasn't Cirque's fault. It was all of our fault because we live here. And I don't know if there's ever anything you can do about it, but I just wanted to try and convey how important that part of the meeting you had earlier this morning is. And I really recognize, I didn't understand Miss Pretty. I was watching this meeting on TV, and then gave me the motivation to get up here. And you mentioned we're in total control. Why are we letting this happen? Or something along that line. And I'm thinking to myself, no, the state isn't in total control because now NEPA and the feds are involved in this mess, okay? But really we are in total control because of all the things I used to think were bad and possibly treason, where the federal government got control of something in this state. It never was. I misconceived that. It takes the state being an accomplice with a bad thing that happens for it to happen. The state authorizes, once the state accepts something, like we accept Section 6 cooperative agreement. We signed that agreement. This agency did, and I know forestry did. And I've seen them and read them, and with one letter, they can be backed out of it. And let me tell you, I think knees will be shaken in federal agencies should we, and this was recommended at a meeting in Kissimmee quite a few years ago, and I handed out 10 copies of that 10-page document for all the commissioners to read. I don't know if anybody ever knew about it. But that's one, there may be more leverages out there than is on everybody's mind as a rule. And if it takes something like that, or going to court, or asking us to all go out and stand in front of their bulldozers if we have to before letting, but the emergency procedure has to be done. And in lieu of that, these other drastic, out-of-the-box, wacko ideas ought to be gotten to get their attention. You want to go to Washington? Go up there and tell them that. We'll take your endangered species and we'll run the endangered species in this state under full state control. But anyway, I got on too long anyway.
Thank you, Frank. Appreciate it. Manley Fuller up next.
I'll pass it.
Pass. And then Newton Cook, followed by Todd Allman.
Thank you guys for staying around. Sometimes it's best. Frank lived it. I don't agree with him a lot, but he lived it. I've got just a real couple, 3 things. First of all, I want to say thank you very much to Ed Harris and the staff that manages the vegetation on the Kissimmee Chain of Lakes. We had a little dust up with some spray plans, and they got with the stakeholders and worked with us, and we've come to a reasonable agreement. I have real concerns because there's a big pushback from some of the stakeholders up there to spray that lake from shore to shore. I mean, this is Florida, you know, we have marshes and we have vegetation in our lakes. This is not some ski lake. And I have to say this to our fishermen friends. I really became a little bit unhappy about spraying lanes through the littoral zones up on the side of the lake. So the big $60,000 bass boats don't have to go down the middle of the lake where it's windy and waves out there. That's so much BS. But they got a lot of money and make a lot of push. But this is Florida, guys. Take care of our littoral zone. More land officers. We're crying for land officers right here in this area. The check station at Hungerland burned down. Storm shelters in the KCOL ripped out the electricity. We got a lot of people out there running around in nice boats looking at the girls in bikinis. We need some guys fighting mosquitoes and ladies in these WMAs and in our hunting areas. Big time. And last but not least.
What's wrong with the bikinis?
Nothing wrong with them, but I'd rather for them be chasing people running around with spotlights in the dark, shining the deer. Sheriff's Department arresting poachers in Mark County. Come on. You know, they're supposed to be looking for robbers. And they're out there catching deer people. Spotlight. Last but not least, being on dim tag, we're not going to let the tag and report system die. It is the only scientific proper system to manage deer herd. Staff here has to do what they have, but we who are on dim tag, we can stand up in front of you guys and in front of the politicians and say, look, you want scientific deer management, get a reasonable tag and report system in the state. Thank you very much. Thank y'all for staying late.
Thank you, Nick. Todd?
Yeah, 2 o'clock y'all were hungry, at 6 o'clock I'm sure you're thirsty, so I'll wait my time.
We really appreciate that. Wow, you're my hero. Marshall Jones is up next. That is Marshall Jones. Yeah. Marshall, you're the last speaker of the day. So no pressure. Yeah. No pressure.
Outstanding. Thanks for having me back. All right. I'm Marshall Jones from Max Fish Camp. I appreciate the time to be here today. And again, you know, at Max Fish Camp, we take the health and conservation of our Everglades seriously. We strive to educate all persons who come by about the history and the culture of the Gladesmen and the early Everglades Indians. We educate them about the flora, including the herbaceous medicinal plants. And it is important that people realize just what it is that we have in our backyards and our own ecosystem right here in South Florida. We educate them about the fauna. We discuss, you know, the alligators and their habits and their habitat, how they are the true protector of the Everglades. We talk about the deer and how they require sustainable tree islands and upland habitat. We speak of the snail kite, the wading birds, you know, the rookeries and so on and so forth. This list can go on. But ultimately, I just want to say thank you to the FWC for all it is that you do for the Everglades and for Florida as a whole. You know, I ask that the FWC maintains an aggressive position throughout the restoration efforts by the corps and the other civil engineers involved in this. You know, please continue to hold accountable those who would sacrifice the Everglades and turn the wetlands into wastelands devoid of its native inhabitants. You have the authority to hold those people accountable, those organizations, and please continue to do so. You know, I find it almost ironic that SERP contains 68 individual components, and that within SERP's boundaries there's 68 endangered species. A little bit of irony there. You know, as seen on the film by Commissioner Bergeron earlier when he was out on the airboat with so many people and standing there in the water above his belly button, I happened to be out that same day in the same area, taking out people that were doing a soil core sampling for the USGS. And the average water depth out there was between 85 and 115 centimeters. And that you know, translates to from 33 to 45 inches was the average water depth in the same area Mr. Bergeron was at that day. That's just not acceptable. we measured 57 different sites that day, water depth. Anyways, I would just like to explain to people regularly about the alligator. In closing here, I just want to say, just how I like to explain to people on a regular basis about the alligator being the protector of the Everglades. Alligator Ron Bergeron, who just stepped out, he is perhaps the most important alligator fighting for the Everglades today. So he's gone, but thank you, Mr. Bergeron.
Thank you. Very nice compliment.
Mr. Vice Chairman.
That is it. Marshall is the last speaker.
This is interesting. It's the end of a long, long day. And our alligator wrestler is out there. I think he's getting a little exercise he needed, so he's going to wrestle another alligator tonight. Good for him. Now, we'd like to, are there any members of the public that are still surviving here? We had an outstanding day, and it's a great victory for the Everglades. And all of us together are highly sympathetic, and frankly, Mr. Director, I think we had a terrific day. Any comments?
I have just one thing. Newton, I just wanted to find a comment. Well, you know, we love you, we'll work with you, but I just want to clarify. I think you were being humorous, but the remark about our officers out there and their motives, I want to be clear. Our guys work hard, long hours, even when they're on the water, when they're in the woods, and I just want to make sure that doesn't go unnoticed. And I know you guys appreciate that, but sometimes remarks like that don't come across right. So I just want to make sure you knew that. Thanks.
Commissioners, after a long day, if we have commissioner exchange, can we move that to tomorrow, or would you like to have it now? It's totally up to you. Mr. Roberts, Mr. Liddy.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to get into this position paper a little bit, if you don't mind.
I think it's a marvelous idea. If the public wouldn't mind, is what we'd like to do is reopen all of this. Right. We'd like to conceptually have about a 3-hour conversation about the future.
In all seriousness, I thought we were going to be without our vice chairman as we closed out the meeting. And so I know that he, he's our resident philosopher, historian, lots of different titles.
That is true.
But mainly he comes up with clever quotes from Teddy Roosevelt. And so since I'm a little younger than Brian, I like to get some quotes from Ronald Reagan sometimes. And so, I'm joking about it. I'm not really that much younger. But, and I hate that Alligator isn't here to hear this, but I was reminded of a Ronald Reagan quote during the earlier part of our meeting today, and that is, when you can't make them see the light, make them feel the heat. And I think that, sometimes when you're up against these challenges, obviously we're very lucky to have, Commissioner Bergeron is the expert on the Everglades, and he is very passionate about it. I think we can all safely say no one understands it better than he does. And so, as the new guy, I feel lucky to have him here as the point man on this issue. And even if it is just making people feel the heat, and I don't mean the people that are here today in the room, but just in general, with the bureaucracy that we're up against sometimes, that's what we need to do.
Well said.
Thank you.
Well said. I wish you were alive when Reagan was president. You would have really liked him.
These are marvelous comments from 2 of our younger commissioners.
I was alive. I never got a chance to vote for him.
Thank you. Thank you. Comments from the Panhandle. We appreciate that. And we want to thank all members of the public and certainly our exhausted staff for having the endurance to have another one of our marvelous meetings. And we're blessed we're here in the Everglades. Amen. Everyone, have a great evening. We'll see you in the morning.
I do. Oh, so when I've watched it online, it's been you. No, this is just my second time doing this. So we are in beta, and it's usually when you're watching it online, probably Florida channel, and sometimes we also live stream in a separate area.
Yeah, just have seen it on our site.
Yes, on our site, that's that gentleman over there in the black. Yeah.
That's crazy.
So yeah, so we're learning to do it on this side, and that way we're going to be able to go out live and like cover releases and rescues and wildlife stuff or, just interesting things to get it up live right then. Yeah, well, excited about that.
So you're out of Tallahassee?
Yes.
Yeah, we're the security officers.
Awesome.
How are you? Good.